That's from a year, right?
Yeah, probably be like this. Unless we get another early break.
Yeah. My husband's working. Hi. Oh, thank you. Like I said, you didn't have any trouble.
Have you trouble at all?
Good. Oh, I opened it. I never hooked it up or anything. So good. Huh?
She's hoping for some motivation. A little better with exercise.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I mean, it can motivate you to do stuff.
Well,
I don't know all the words. All I know is I got it, we searched all the different ones. Hopefully it doesn't are great. And then I just remembered that Brittany had chewed the bottom of the thing. I was like, well, I don't think that'll hinder anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, good to see you, Jim.
So how's your husband doing?
Good.
Good, how are you? Good to see you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this workshop of the Scarborough Town Council. Today is Wednesday, January 21st, 2026. Pleased to see we have a full council here. Also pleased to be joined by members of our state legislative delegation. We have Representative Sophie Warren, Representative Kelly Murphy, House Speakers Ryan Fecteau, and Representative Drew Gattine. Senators Ann Carney and Stacey Brenner had really wanted to be here, but I know this is a very busy time of the year with the session getting going, and they're unfortunately unable to join us, but they send their regrets, and they've certainly received our communications, and we know that they're engaged in this issue. And the focus of this workshop, we can certainly entertain other topics that might be of interest and relevant, but we've really set this up primarily to talk about LD 1829, which is the state legislation that would impact municipalities' ability to regulate and manage growth. This council, at its last meeting on January 7th, unanimously passed a resolution really stating the will of this council, which I believe is generally reflective of the town. And we've certainly heard a lot from our voters and taxpayers who are concerned about growth. And Scarborough's been a fast-growing community. I'm personally proud of the fact that we've done a lot of affordable housing and multifamily and other types of development in Scarborough. It continues to be a need, and I will always advocate for that within the parameters of everything else that we deal with as a town. But without further ado, and I'm not going to read off the resolution. I think everyone has it and understands the general sentiment. I'm going to turn over in a moment to Speaker Fecteau so he can kind of kick things off. And then I hope this will be a fairly free-flowing conversation among the council and the representatives who are here. And if we have time, we will certainly open it up for public comment. We have until 7 o'clock when we have our regularly scheduled business meeting. Just for members of the public who are here or watching remotely, if we do not have time for public comment during this workshop, or for everyone who wants to give public comment to do so during this workshop, we'll have that opportunity at the start of our regular council meeting. We always have our standing agenda item, which is general public comment for items that are not action items on our agenda. And certainly invite our representatives to stick around for that if that is the case, although I know you're busy. So without further ado, and with that housekeeping covered, I will hand it over to Speaker Fecteau and give him an opportunity to maybe do a little bit of framing here in terms of the origins of 1829 and kind of where we are right now with potential fixes.
Mm-hmm. I have a handout that might be helpful as well. Okay. Well, first and foremost, I want to provide a expression of thanks to all of you for inviting us to be here this evening. I think it's an important opportunity for us to hear from you, but also for you to hear from us about the work that we've been doing in the legislature. I think it's no secret that housing remains one of the top issues that we face here in the state of Maine. One of the nice things about all the polling that's being done in this election year is they not only poll about the candidates who are running for various offices, they also typically ask what issues are on the minds of voters. And if you look at polling, regardless of the candidate that's commissioned the poll, the issue that continues to rise to the top for Maine voters is the issue of housing. People are struggling to find an affordable place to live, whether they want to be a renter or a homeowner. And I think we all are focused at all levels of government, even the federal government, believe it or not, on trying to find ways to resolve the challenges we face around housing. And that really is the impetus for the work we're doing in the legislature around this issue. I think a lot of focus has been on the LD 1829, but we've also done a lot of other work on this issue. Happy to talk about those other efforts, but I think obviously tonight's focus is on LD 1829. You'll recall that in 2021, the legislature had a commission focused on zoning and land use. That commission reported out recommendations that led to the creation of LD 2003. LD 2003 was passed in 2022, had an implementation date that was originally originally the year that followed, or actually the implementation date was originally, I think, 6 months after its passage, and then the implementation date was later changed based on feedback from municipalities about the timing of getting that law on the books. The legislature was responsive, did that, and the law has now been in effect for over a year and a half. This bill really is not as expansive as LD 2003. You recall that bill walked across many bridges around land use and zoning. LD 1829 is a rewrite of a portion of LD 2003, and then just a few additional measures that in some ways are related to zoning, but in other ways are just related to the way planning approvals work. And so I don't know if it's helpful. I would ask you all to give me your direction, but would it be helpful to walk through the elements of the law, or what's the best approach?
Sure, maybe just very quickly. I do want to
Yeah.
make sure we leave plenty of time for questions and
Yeah.
discussion. Yeah.
Okay. So I think
Sure. Can I just add, as you talk about it, are you familiar with the fix legislation that's
Yes.
in work? And also kind of help us understand.
okay. I'll try my best. That may be challenging, but I'll try. Yeah.
And sorry, and I meant to cover this sort of in the setup part of it, but I know that there are at least a couple folks here in the audience who are from other communities representing other towns. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of raising your hand, if that's the case, just so we have a general sense of that. Thank you very much. All right.
Yeah, so there's a bill that's been submitted by Representative Collmore from Pittsfield. She serves on the Housing Committee. The Housing Committee is the committee of jurisdiction for this law, LD 1829, that is now law. She has a bill that is correcting some errors in the original drafting of the law, and then some additional items have been added based on feedback, including from communities like Scarborough. So I can try to intersect the new proposal with the elements of the laws as it currently stands. So first and foremost, in the handout that I provided the council, there's a reference to probably the most significant aspect of the law, which is not a new element to what was passed into state law. This is a revision of the state law that was passed as a result of LD 2003. LD 2003, this section is the part that allows for additional units in residential areas that were previously would have been considered exclusively zoned for single-family homes. And these are areas that are either in growth areas, as designated by a comprehensive plan, or with access to public sewer, public water. The previous law was very difficult to understand. If you go back to the chaptered law that resulted from 2003 and then try to explain it to your constituents, I think you, like me, even though I was involved in the drafting of the law, would have found it very, very confusing and ultimately, in some ways, unworkable for the average person to understand, how does this law apply to me? How can I take advantage of the opportunities that were included in this law? So we redrafted it to make it more simple. If you're in a growth area or you have access to public sewer, public water, you're allowed up to 4 additional units, or sorry, you're allowed 4 units in totality on the lot. You still have to comply with setback requirements, which will be different town by town. So whatever Scarborough has for setbacks would apply. You still have to comply with height restrictions. So whatever Scarborough has for height restrictions would still apply. You still have to comply with lot coverage requirements. So again, whatever Scarborough has would apply. So really, we're talking about unlocking the possibility that you could have 4 units on a lot in these areas, it doesn't mean that you will be able to build 4 units. Because if you cannot respect the setbacks, you cannot respect the height restrictions, you cannot respect the parking requirements, you cannot respect the lot coverage, you might not be able to build 4 units on the lot. So it is not universal that every lot that is in these areas will suddenly have the maximum number of units on the lot. So I think that's an important point of clarification. And again, this was allowed in many circumstances under 2003, but redrafted in a manner that just makes it very clean as to when it's applicable and when it's not. The other changes, we added a height bonus under the density bonus section for affordable housing. This is only for affordable housing as defined by the law, which is 60 to 80% of AMI units that are for folks under 80% of AMI for rental and under 120% of AMI for home ownership. And they have to be in areas that already allow multifamily housing. And so the height bonus is 1 additional floor, and it will only apply if the housing density bonus applies. So the circumstances in which this would be taken advantage of are basically narrowly developments that are using a low-income housing tax credit. You're probably not going to see, you wouldn't see this be used pretty much otherwise unless there's some other subsidy source that is allowing for the developer to for the numbers to work. It doesn't work otherwise without subsidy. The other change requires that for ADUs that owner occupancy requirements be eliminated. So under 2003, again, ADUs largely allowed in most areas, and the state commissioned a report in 2023 focused on why some of the barriers to actually having ADUs get built. And through that report, one of the things that was learned from financing authorities like banks is that owner occupancy requirements diminish the assessed or appraised value of an accessory dwelling unit, which limits someone's loan to value ratio. And therefore, getting a construction loan is more difficult for the average person. If you have the ability to potentially record rental income from both the primary and the accessory, you end up getting more value. And so that's why we eliminated the owner occupancy requirement. I know that some towns are using this as a way of mitigating short-term rentals. There are other tools in your tool belt to regulate short-term rentals. Owner occupancy requirements in and of itself does not prevent short-term rentals. And I think they're pretty hard to enforce. I mean, unless you're knocking on someone's door and checking to see that the owner is on site living there, I think it serves more as a feel-good way of mitigating short-term rentals than it actually mitigates them. We also got rid of sprinkler requirements for ADUs. I'm not sure if Scarborough required ADUs to be sprinkled, but that some towns do, some towns don't. We are applying the same rules of the road for developments under 4 units that would apply to a single-family home. And the bill required planning board members to attend a training provided by a statewide municipal organization or state entity within 180 days of appointment. And then the other significant change is the lot size requirement. So we changed the lot size requirements to 5,000 square feet in designated growth areas for the first 4 units. So again, the first 4 units that might be able to work if you respect all the other elements of land use. And a drafting error in the bill was that for areas served by public water, public sewer, they were supposed to have a minimum lot size of 10,000. The drafting era applied the 5,000 minimum lot size to the public sewer, public water areas as well. That should have been 10,000. So Representative Collimore's bill changes public water, public sewer to 10,000 minimum lot size instead of what currently is reflected in law, which is 5,000. We also got rid of the allowance for growth rates of growth in growth areas. And Representative Collmore's bill takes a suggestion that I think was suggested by the town of Scarborough at one meeting I was at or another, to utilize the percentage of growth that's part of comprehensive plan statute to allow that if a town is meeting a percentage of their anticipated growth as part of the land use statute, they would still be able to retain the growth, the rate of growth ordinance in their growth areas. And so that is in Representative Collmore's bill. So rate of growth will become a tool again for towns like Scarborough that want to use it in growth areas. Trying to think of other elements of the law, but I think that's a big overview. The only other thing I'll add, as you all know, there's a statewide housing production goal report that said 84,000 units statewide, but let's narrow that down to Cumberland. In Cumberland, that means 18,800 additional units are needed by 2030. And this represents the higher end of expected market demand. Growth beyond that is not what's expected. That's why the report had a maximum expected market demand. There are 156,723 units currently. Therefore, the market demands an 11.9% increase in housing units and no more. Scarborough had a 16% increase in dwelling units between 2010 and 2020. And so what I think is important to keep in mind is LD 1829, LD 2003 before it levels the playing field for towns like Scarborough so that you do not have to continue to bear an outsized burden of growth compared to your neighbors. The overall total growth will be less than what Scarborough had experienced in the last decade. Without LD 1829, Scarborough would likely continue to face the oversized burden of growing faster than your neighbors and accommodating a higher percentage of the region's housing demand rather than a proportional share. I commend all of you for the work that you've done to grow as smartly as you can, which is always challenging when ordinances have to be followed, and if it's allowed, it's allowed. But I think the town of Scarborough has clearly, as evidenced in the 16% growth over the last 10 years, has a larger share of the burden than surrounding communities. That is why having a statewide law is important, because there are communities I think we can all reconcile have not shared any proportion of the share of the growth needed to meet the demand, and not just the demand that exists today, but the future demand. We know our demographics. We're an aging population. People are going to retire, but they're not going to leave the state of Maine. Not all of them. There's only so much room in Florida, and they're going to stay here, and they're going to need housing just the same as they did before they retired. But someone has to replace them in their workplace, and those people are going to need housing as well. And so the demand is not just what exists today. It's also the demand that will be needed to meet the needs of our employers, including our municipal employers. Fire, police, school bus drivers, teachers, public works. These people are also going to retire. They're going to need to be replaced by someone else. And we need to have housing that can accommodate them. And it shouldn't just be housing that the town of Scarborough is providing, but it should be housing that every town in close proximity to an employer is providing, so that we can tackle this issue head on. So with that, I will cease my soapbox.
Thank you, Speaker. That's helpful framing and context. I want to kind of open it up for discussion. I will note that our town planner, Autumn Spear, is here and is available to speak to elements of this, including the draft fix legislation that she made a priority of analyzing. And for members of the public, we realize this may be a little hard to follow at times because we're talking about new legislation that would make some changes to what we've all been referring to as 1829. And so it's fluid, it's a moving target, but I guess that's a good problem to have, that we're talking about potential changes. So Thanks. John?
So it's great to hear in the fixed legislation that they're adjusting the terms, it sounds like, to allow municipalities like us to continue to manage the rate of growth. So can you explain a little bit again what that is? So right now, my understanding is we have to grow at 105% of our past 10 years. So is it so long as we're growing at that pace that we can still cap it at that 105%? Is that essentially what this legislation is allowing us to do?
I think it's actually a percentage of the 105%. So I don't know exactly where it landed because I didn't draft the bill, and Representative Collmore has been sort of leading the way on this bill. So I miss.
I think,
Yeah.
my understanding, it changes the standard from 10%, 10-year average, 105%, 104% of that to 130% of your 5-year average.
So
Is-
it's
is-
higher than, okay.
It
That's
is
still,
higher.
that's not that great for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, I think it's great that we would still have the ability to have a rate of growth ordinance, but that look back period is 5 years instead of 10 years.
Yeah.
And the annual increase that we would be required to offer is 130% of that 5-year average. So it's a significant difference from what we have now, but
Yeah.
I do appreciate that they're leaving that tool in the toolbox.
And I think it's important to also remember, you still have your rate of growth or rate of growth that can apply to anything that is outside of your growth areas, including areas with public water and public sewer. That's, I mean, I don't know how much of the town is not, I don't know how much of your town has public water, public sewer, and it is not in a growth area. But so, I was recently talking to the folks in the town of Elliott, and they're actually getting rid of their rate of growth ordinance in their growth area, and they're making their non-growth area rate of growth ordinance highly restrictive because they don't want people to continue to build in the parts of town where they don't want growth to occur. And I think we can all be realistic here in what we see. We see way too much development in parts of our communities that we never wanted to see developed to the extent that they're being developed. Near streams, near ponds, near beaches, near lakes, agricultural land, forested land, subdivisions that are 20 homes in size in far out parts of our communities that then require people to travel longer distances to get to where they're going. I mean, I don't know what your rate of growth ordinance looks like outside of growth areas, but it may be something to consider being more restrictive.
I would say we're pretty restrictive today as it stands. And to me, the public sewer water component, actually, I'm looking at our planner because to make sure I'm saying this right, but I think that's the piece that is going to add pressure to places that we have had in one of our growth areas that we wanted to be small, that will now allow for more density that we weren't anticipating that would happen in places, I think, like in Dunstan, where we've heard clearly from residents that that is already, at capacity and we shouldn't be growing faster. So I do think that particular provision does add additional pressure to areas we don't want to see, accelerated growth or accelerated density.
Because this water sewer does not have capacity for it.
The water sewer is there with capacity, but it's more infrastructure is a problem. And, while I really appreciate the concept of the level playing field, one of the challenges that we have is that if our neighbors are growing, Gorham and south of us, we're a pass-through community with Route 1. We know 30% of traffic comes through outside communities every day in Scarborough, and we hear a lot from residents about concerns. So if our outside neighbors are growing and our infrastructure isn't getting the support it needs, our residents are going to get frustrated because of that pass-through nature. And so one of my frustrations with this is the lack of funding for infrastructure to support these communities as they grow, especially pass-through communities like Scarborough, where, we're experiencing a lot of that, both from the west side and from the south. And so to me, this legislation doesn't contemplate what we're doing there. And I don't know if there's a different committee that you guys are involved in that needs to figure out how do we make sure as communities are growing that we're making sure things like Route 1, Kane Road, Gorham Road, and our community especially are getting the financial support we need so that we can fix those roads to handle the increased capacity that we're likely going to see from the surrounding communities growing.
And I don't mean to butt in here, but I just briefly just wanted to bring up some of the discussion that I've heard of different proposed developments or recent votes and discussions is around the level of congestion and traffic that we're dealing with. And so I appreciate the point around fixing the roads. I think also discussion around public transportation and infrastructure and support both. I know that there's some efforts that are underway, and I appreciate and commend the efforts that Scarborough's been trying to make, but there should be more public support at the state level. And I think so many issues are connected to each other, but something that motivated me in running for office and that I've constantly been talking about here in our community is climate change. And so I just wanted to add here that transportation and emissions are our highest sector of CO2 impact. And we do have a exact and quite precise way of understanding how this level of growth is going to impact that. And it's going to exacerbate it unless we have more public transportation infrastructure and investment. And certainly the types of numbers that we're talking about is not something we can burden our municipalities with. And it does feel like, to your point, that it's sort of the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So we have one committee that's sort of siloed dealing with certain housing issues. But to your point, and sort of some of what you were speaking about wasn't really touching on transportation and traffic issues at all. And that's an enormous concern, and it's a public safety concern as well, let alone the environmental impacts. So I guess my feeling partly is that I appreciate, it sounds like we're getting in the weeds about a bill that's been proposed. I don't think it's been printed yet, and also for members of the public, if you wanted to look it up, my impression is that that's not publicly available yet. I could be wrong about that, but I haven't, my impression.
She might have shared a draft, but it doesn't have an LD in it.
Yeah. Just so, because I feel like if there's members of the public that are listening or want to comment, that you should be able to have everything that we have to know. I do want to understand what we all want to see from a reform, and to be specific about that rather than saying that a bill that has been proposed is not what we're looking for. I really do want to know what you want to see and how connected that is to something that's quite defined. And I appreciate more money to deal with the issues, but being specific about what those issues are, I think is going to be extremely helpful for us. And as well, I guess I want to say my 2 cents while I'm on my like soapbox here, is that it does feel a little bit like there's very few communities who have done a tremendous amount of growth, and that there's a lot of nuance and good and also criticism and bad that's come with that growth for Scarborough. But I guess I want to make sure, more than a level playing field, that Scarborough is not harmed while we see the amount of work that needs to happen in other communities. So I think just uplifting what John's saying about where we are situated, I do think it's very important that legislation like this goes into effect, but not at the risk of harming the very few communities who have been leaders and have also been harmed in trying to do things that are sort of cutting edge. And I talked to a number of our community members. I think part of why they're here today is because of things that have already happened, not the near-term impacts of this bill. So we already have congestion and traffic issues and these things. So when we say we've got this housing crisis, we have, there's many issues, and one of them is affordability. And bills like this, we have to name where they will longer term bring down costs for housing. It doesn't help to address the crises of affordability we're facing today. So that's my 2 cents, and I'll get off my.
So just to be specific to your question of like, well, what would I like to see? I would like to see our delegation request that we keep that growth rate percentage to 105%, and maybe it's 105% if your community grows X number of units a year, or something that basically allows us to continue to manage at the pace that we've already set. Because again, unfortunately, what's happened in Scarborough, even with that 10-year average, we've had some really high peaks that have really skewed our data. And so that skew is continuing with us. And so we've been trying hard, at least since I've been on council, some of us over the past 5 years, to really try and temper that. And we've done a lot of great work to try and do things to manage growth. But again, I feel like that 130% just really take this like 5 steps backwards from all the great work we've done. And so I would like you guys to hopefully advocate for that. And then as it relates to infrastructure, you know, Payne Road, we've already done a study. We know it's gonna cost $20 million to fix it. We put impact fees in place. We've tried to coordinate with DOT to prioritize it. It'll take us 20 years to raise the funds through impact fees in order to fix the road, and we need to fix it now. So anything the state can do to help, again, for these real pass-through roads, help us get funding. I think that's super important. Route 1 is like its own animal, and I know there's a lot of stuff happening for Route 1 all over Maine right now. But for us, especially at the marsh, needing to make sure we get that fixed. And I know we're working closely with DOT, and they're moving forward to try and get a grant, which is great. But I mean, Route 1 is a big pain point. And then Gorham Road, we had a great meeting last week with MDOT as well, talking about the Gorham West project. And so continuing to push to make sure that that is prioritized and maybe goes quickly and gets funding, that doesn't fall on municipalities to have to bear that burden. I think that's super important. When we did our recent survey, again, the 3 issues that we hear consistently from residents that are concerned, and this is our 3rd survey in a row, same things. It's the pace of growth, traffic and transportation, which includes a desire for public transit, which would be great, and affordability. And affordability for them is not more housing that they can move into, it's property taxes. And so if all of this growth ultimately results in our taxpayers locally having to pay for these things, then that's going to be a problem, because I think that's one of the downsides of this at this point is, yeah, we might be growing and there'll be some new value that will help us offset that from a property tax perspective, but it's still making things very expensive for our existing residents. And I don't want to see people who live here today not be able to afford to live here because property taxes are so high that they're having to make tough choices. And in Scarborough specifically, our senior population is aging. I don't know if it's faster than the pace of the rest of the state, but it's remarkable, I think, when we had Sedco come and share with us just how fast our seniors are growing on fixed income. And so property taxes really matter. So whatever is happening in the property tax task force, I would ask that our legislatures pay close attention to that. One thing that we've talked about in Scarborough and some other communities is a local option sales tax, which I know has happened or tried many times in the past, but that is, I think, that would be super helpful for Scarborough.
Do you explain a little bit what that is for if there's members of the public that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna ask Tom to explain it, or someone else. Put him on this, I've been talking enough, so Tom, you can explain it.
Yeah, this is not a new idea. This has come up for, 40 years or better. Essentially, it would be a change to the Maine Constitution that would allow municipalities.
It doesn't necessarily, it depends on how it's functioning, but it doesn't necessarily have to come through a change in the Constitution, is my understanding.
Yeah.
It's actually, this is
However you need to do it. You can't do it today. So
just my bugaboo with it is that we have brought proposals pretty far forward, and our current governor does not support that new taxation. So my understanding is that it's not gone through for that reason.
well, it seems to me you can override a governor's position.
Yeah.
At any rate, I was asked to explain, the basic notion would be to find an alternative revenue stream rather than the entire reliance on property taxes to fund local priorities. That's just one of many. This notion would have communities choose for themselves whether they would like to self-impose an additional tax, typically on sales. And that could be even further directed to certain purposes, I suppose.
Lodging.
Those details haven't been sorted through, but the conversation is fairly predictable every session or every other. But for reasons that you know better than I, it's never advanced further.
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges with that is it's been a pseudo rural versus urban debate in Augusta. The urban communities want it, the rural towns don't think they'll benefit from it. So when you look at the votes, it typically is always fallen on urban members voting for it and rural members voting against it.
Even though it's optional.
Yeah, I would think as part of the conversation that we've had when we've met with other municipalities was it can't just be to benefit us. It would have to be something that goes into the state and then is shared. As long as we're getting a fair percentage of that, anything that we can do to help offset property taxes, whether, you know, we fund or finance most of that for the state, I don't really care, as long as we're getting some of it back so that we can help with property taxes. I think it would be good. Ideally, yes, I would love to have it all, but I understand that that's probably not feasible. So I think hopefully there's an option there. The only other,
And GP has been talking about a new approach to it, which would be regional and allowing an approach where a group of communities could come together and agree to impose a local sales tax or a local lodging tax. And I think that's interesting. I don't think that approach has been tried. I think it's always been, you know, one municipality at a time. So to the extent that that becomes a proposal in the legislature in the future, maybe that works because, you know, Bar Harbor and a few surrounding communities around Bar Harbor do it together. And now it's not just the service center community that's benefiting, but the other communities that also do take on some of the burden of being nearby a community that has a lot of visitors in the summer.
yeah, I think that's great. The only other legislative suggestion for you guys to explore, and I'm assuming it's something that you guys can do, and it's actually come from residents that I think is an idea worth exploring, is particularly to deal with traffic. Is there a way to work with MTA to find ways to not charge, at least during peak hours or something? So that way, my hypothesis is a lot of people aren't using 95 because they don't want to pay the tolls. And so they're coming through Route 1 and other places. So if we can somehow find a way to incentivize use, I know it doesn't get to the desire for public transportation, which I think is probably a better solution, but at the same time,
So,
yeah.
no, I hear you.
So this would at least help us, I think, hopefully make more people want to go on 95 as opposed to.
Are you allowed to put your own toll booth on Route 1?
I think we joked about that. I don't know if we can, but I'm sure if we could, we would, but unfortunately.
Might depend on who ends up paying for the raising of the road over the
Yeah.
marsh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to follow up a little bit about, you said $20 million to fix.
Yeah.
Green Road. So the last time the comprehensive plan, when that committee was about to be seated, there were all these workshops and I attended all of them. And one of the things that the consultant who was running the things said is we are a pass-through town, which we know, and suggested ways to slow traffic on Route 1 and Gorham Road and Payne Road, which sounds counterintuitive, but it would annoy people from other towns enough that they would then go to the highways instead of using Route 1 as a highway. So in this $20 million to fix Payne Road, were there any things that were like putting, I think some of the things he said, like put curbs in the road or put some rotaries in, put trees closer to the sides of the road. Those are all like traffic calming things that naturally slow traffic, and those
Roundabouts.
could lead to people in Biddeford
I admittedly have done it several times.
taking 95 instead.
Yeah.
To alleviate traffic and obviously make it easier for people within town to get around. So was that?
Yeah, I feel like when we've talked for this particular one, it is essentially making Payne Road a 4-lane road.
Yeah.
And I think
I feel like it's going the opposite way, but I mean, that's a whole other topic.
I think so, but I think unfortunately, given the development that's occurred in the area, it's made it more of a necessity where, again, going the opposite direction just may not be feasible at this point. Maybe it would have been 10 years ago, but at this stage with the development happening at the Downs, I don't see how, with all the traffic coming in and out down from the mall and all of that, like I think it's.
I mean, I take Payne Road every single day, so
Yeah.
you're not telling me anything. I don't
Yeah, so I think that's part of the challenge there. And so for that one in particular, again, I think we have a pretty good design in place. And again, it's just at this point where we changed our impact fees, we're starting to collect, but it's gonna take us a long time. So again, if we can get state support for any of our roads to do anything, like I would be open if it meant more traffic calming. Like I don't think that's off the table. I just think, you know, ideally, the more we can lessen pass through, that would be great. Or if we can make flow better, that would be great. So it's probably a combination of both that we have to try and optimize. So I will yield my time and let.
It is to say though, I mean, I do think that one of the benefits of
meetings like this. And I know we've been trying to do this a little bit more frequently around a number of issues, is the opportunity to connect the dots on issues that, I think, depending on what you do, and where you sit, those dots are easy to connect. So it would be helpful for us to have more conversations and understand what your conversations are like with DOT, because we have the opportunity also to interact with DOT. I do think that one of the, overall really good things that we have done in Augusta over the last few years is that we've now created a legislative committee that is only focused on housing. Well, it's mostly focused on housing. From having no housing committee to having a special housing committee to now having a permanent committee that is very focused on housing. And I do think that one of the things that has led us here today is that it has really put to the forefront the conversation about what are the things that should be driven by the state, what are the things that should be part of regional planning, and what are the things that should be left up to the municipalities. And I'm not saying we always get it right. And I think if we always got it right, we probably wouldn't be, sitting here today talking about the things the speaker explained and bills to, to continue to make those changes. But Councilor Anderson, to your point, I do think when I sat on the special committee for a couple of years, it became very, very obvious that there is a better connection that needs to be drawn between housing policy and transportation policy. And I think Scarborough really has been at the forefront of that conversation because of some of the disputes that are very specific to this town. And keeping us in the loop on those conversations with DOT. And we have the opportunity, we have actually made more permanent investments in transportation infrastructure in the legislature, but I still think that there are opportunities to do more and looking at our ability to borrow and where those investments need to be made. So I think there needs to be a strong voice from communities, especially that are experiencing growth and have to pass through. I represent part of Scarborough, parts of Westbrook, parts of Saco. I think that's something that's common to all three of those communities is a lot of growth. But the growth leads to issues around transportation and traffic, but not just from within that community, but from people going from one place to another.
Like I said, I see it in our community. It's really growth, transportation, and property taxes. And the property tax piece, I think, unfortunately, really comes down to schools, because schools is where the majority of communities' property taxes are going to. And as we continue to grow, if we're not supporting infrastructure, which again, I see our school board chair in the audience, we just passed a $140 million school solution, assuming a certain rate of growth that the school can afford. And now with this legislation, unfortunately, there's a lot of question marks in terms of, well, what are we going to actually grow? And are we going to build a school solution that's too small within 10 years? Because now we're seeing more density in places that we didn't want it. And so I would encourage you guys to think, and I know Kelly, you sit on the education committee. I think housing, schools, transportation really are like the three-legged stool that we really need the state thinking about, because this feels very housing focused, and we're left with two pieces of the stool unsolved for that are really the things that our community is saying that they need solved before they see more growth.
And I think they're going to be exacerbated by this policy. I think it's really hard to acknowledge anything but that. And so it is hard to hear, like in the course of this conversation, if I were just, coming in here to say, okay, we acknowledge that it will cause these other issues. It will lead to an increase in property taxes, and it will lead to an increase in transportation. And gee, hey, maybe there's a couple ideas we could come up with down the line. So I think it's a fair point to raise. And I also just want to name and acknowledge that this doesn't go without drawbacks. And again, that my impression is in talking with members of our community that we have been here before, and that's how we got to the place we're at. We've had multiple referendum around trying to address the school issue, and it's been really heartening to see the amount of collaboration and input, but also I think it's an expression of, hey, the amount of growth that we have found ourselves with today, we in different ways had to pay for, and then now we are having to pay again on the other end of it. And it does feel in some ways that some of the discussion that we're talking about, Payne Road being one, it's just another place where we are, again, having to be responsible for payment. I guess we're talking about different alternatives to address that, but it's hard to see the places where the people who live here now are benefiting. And that's one place where it would feel like, not to wholly and specifically identify it, but the idea of having more ease of public transportation to make it, to make moving around here in our community or neighboring communities more efficient, easier to do, maybe more cost effective, and provide other social benefits. But outside of that, I think it's a fair criticism to raise. And so I appreciate opportunities like this, but it's also, I think, incumbent to say not just that we want to slow down growth, but say like, what are the things that we need when we say that we're critical of growth? Like, what do we mean when we say that? And what do we want to do instead? And it does sound like part of what you're speaking about is more investment in transportation. I hear where you're at on roads in some ways, but what type of commitment can we make to each other around that? Because it does feel like there's a problem today, let alone how it's increased by this. And again, not to go back to this, but I do have some concern of Scarborough being one of the fastest growing in the state, and that it sounds like the place we're at in this conversation is that Scarborough will continue to be impacted. The fix that we're talking about is not going to greatly exempt Scarborough from responsibility of some of these measures. And I mean, you're here, I think you've heard from our constituents, my constituents, that have a real problem with that, because we feel like there is a sense that we're being punished for taking the lead in some ways. And it feeling like, how can we build a level of public trust if, for one, we don't come in here and say we want to find solutions for transportation and congestion, we want to find solutions that are making life easier and better along with growth, and then also saying, hey, but we acknowledge the issues that you're facing today and the issues that will come, but we're still going to initiate those policies largely as is. Not specific to anyone here, but
I
that's
think
sort of where
if
I'm-
we should fairly state that Representative Collmore's bill is not in finished form.
Yeah.
And
I
it's-
haven't seen it.
Yeah, I mean, it's literally
I
not
don't
even
know what
printed
it
yet.
is
It
saying.
hasn't even gone through the revisor's office yet. So the things that we're.
That's how
talking
cutting
about-
edge we are here in Scarborough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're paying attention.
Yeah. But it will have its whole legislative process, including opportunity for public input, including opportunity for amendment, for the committee to work it, for the legislators at large to weigh in on it. So I don't want us to jump to like, this isn't already working, this is a problem, because we don't know what that's gonna look like in its final form. And I think that's largely why we are here, is to try to work together to put in what is going to be beneficial, not just for Scarborough, but for the state, because it is a state legislature. And now, I don't want to take us off topic, but just because you brought up schools, I can tell you a couple things that we're working on the education committee. And I know Shannon's heard it all before because we already sat with the school board, but we are working on big policy issues in our committee this year, including we did a study over 2 years of the school funding formula and how it impacts each community. And we are moving along with that, including the first Tuesday of February, we're having the presentation. We had this research done, and then we asked them to go back and model 4 solutions, and they're going to come back with those answers for us in the first week of February. So there could be some changes to the school funding formula. I have no idea how it would shake out for Scarborough, but something to pay attention to. It's too late at this point for the elementary school solution, but we also have the governor's study on school construction, which is, we think, going to get those. We're going to get that report back in the next couple of weeks. So that is something our committee is going to be spending a long time on. So we are working in tandem in various committees because we understand the pressures that communities are under, including property taxes. That is a problem from Madawaska to Elliott. I mean, literally every town. And some of the things we can't fix because the cost of things have just increased so much that the cost of building a school, we've seen it, right? From the first referendum to the one that just passed, gone up considerably just from the passage of time. So some things we are not going to be able to fix immediately or even in the next 5 years because we can't control costs of materials and food and whatever else. So I just didn't want us to leave with that impression that we are only working in silos. We are working together where we can. And I mean, I specifically am not following what's intimately happening in the housing committee because I have my own committee. And so we all have our own things that we have to follow along with. And I also would like to just kind of reframe a little bit. It sounds like every time we have this conversation that all growth is bad. And I disagree with that as a premise. I grew up here. It used to be there was the beach and Kmart, the end. I mean, there was nothing else here. I think it has become a more attractive place to live, and we came back. My husband and I are both from Scarborough. Came back because it was an improved place to live, and we wanted to bring our kids here. And when we look at ADUs, which I also have in my house, which predates 2003, my parents live in our ADU so that my brother could move into the house that we grew up in. So I'm walking the walk because we are moving seniors out of the big 5-bedroom house that they don't need into the ADU, and filling the workforce really, like it just step by step. And where I live now is where I learned how to drive a stick shift. So we definitely want to see growth only in the really densest part of town. I think we all share that goal because my house was woods. I mean, I didn't do it. It was already built, so it wasn't my fault. But I mean, this is the evolution of Scarborough. And I think Scarborough has done an incredibly good job at keeping growth lately, not the 90s. 90s was the sprawl of the neighborhoods everywhere. But lately, I think we've done a much better job of keeping it very localized, for better or worse in those neighborhoods. But I think we're moving in the right direction. And I don't share the premise that all growth is bad. So that's all.
So the one
I-
thing, can I just say one? thing
Counselor
before-
Anderson, you've just
No,
about
I said
used
I
up your-
said I was done.
You
But-
used it up.
The one piece you said that I just want to touch on about the funding formula is I know one of the things in Scarborough, which I'm proud of, is that we have become a place where we have a lot of special education.
That's another study,
And-
actually.
And it seems like it's been growing a lot more, where the past 2 years, we've had to fund 11 plus special ed techs that are mandated positions. And
That's
so,
not unique to Scarborough, unfortunately.
yeah,
We have I think the number is now 1 in 5 kids entering kindergarten are identified as having special needs.
I think it's 1 in 4 here in Scarborough, just as intense as it is. So again, I just think, as you think about that, like, how do we make sure we're getting?
There's
support?
like literally a whole other study of special ed funding.
And
so.
I just want to say my impression, I could be off, and I know I'm talking to the education chair, is that our community is proportionately a lot more resourced than many other parts of the state. So if we're talking about different sorts of shifts we might make to the school funding formula, I think we have to be realistic about the immense need across our state and what is so important about us being good stewards to our fellow communities and understanding that we have certain needs, but we also have to recognize where we are in a larger picture. And so as part of that, for me, it's maybe not so much about where we can make shifts in the fractions of a certain pie, but making the pie bigger. And so I guess I just also put a pitch. We've got this great piece of legislation proposing a millionaire's tax, and it would be to fund education specifically. And that's a piece of legislation that I believe has passed both the House and the Senate. And so I just think that's one place to look at and say, these are opportunities that, regardless of what your political perspectives would be on, preference for certain tax over another, that if we have a very real problem of property taxes and we have a very real need around education funding, that just being practical, this may be a solution where those that can most afford to be part of that solution are doing so, and that we're not putting on the backs of property taxpayers in the same way. So that's just one piece of the puzzle that I hope we could consider. And I also will just say, I grew up here in Scarborough. I'm not against growth, but I do think that there's a lot of inequalities that are at piece and party to different choices that we have made in our community. And it's my interest to name those things, and I think in doing so, we can move forward and maybe be part of solutions that move in different ways, and certainly to not replicate any of those mistakes at the state level. So trying to find a way forward, I think, is really important, and to say that I don't have a lot of the solutions actually, and yet I think that that we are not presenting a holistic solution here today, and that we're leaving a fair few things on the table to work on. I think it's important to take responsibility for that. Or that's what I feel like I'm trying to do.
So the millionaire slide didn't pass the House. It's like floating.
It's floating.
Yeah, it hasn't at its final time in the House, right?
No, it's on the table.
On the
My
table.
apologies, I
It's
misspoke.
okay.
It.
So I appreciate all those insights and thoughts and responses, and Representative Murphy, I definitely do appreciate your comments about, different perspectives on growth. And I happen to share some of that. And I've certainly seen a lot of change in the 2+ decades that I've been here. I think, one thing, and not to be glib about it, but one thing that I've said to people at times is like, everybody who already lives in Scarborough lives in a house that had to get built at some point, a house or an apartment. It hasn't been there, it wasn't there from creation, so to speak. So I think we need to be conscious of that, and obviously we want to manage things as carefully as possible. And we did get, we had what we called our Cakes with Counselors series that you might have heard about during the fall, where we met informally and around different places around town and talked to residents about whatever issues they wanted to talk about. Growth, of course, was a big one. And we heard a lot of concerns about LD 1829, but we also did hear at least a smattering of feedback that was, sort of recognizing that it had the promise to create some opportunities for certain types of affordability, the ADU piece being one of them. We did get some feedback in a couple of sessions I was in about how they're for some people, including young people who are in Scarborough, want to stay in Scarborough, want to come back to Scarborough, they may need to be creative about how they can make it work. So I think it is important to acknowledge that as well. And assuming that this gets changed to some extent going forward, there may be elements in there that do make some sense. With that, I want to open it up to anyone on the council who hasn't chimed in yet.
Did my earlier comments count? So I have a process question. I really appreciate all the feedback. I think there's general recognition of the proclamation we made outlined what we saw as the concerns and the impacts. I would opine that from Councilor Anderson's illustration of the three-legged stool, that this could be the most important or impactful legislation this year for your constituents in so many different ways. So I want to understand process. There's corrective legislation being worked on. How can you all impact that and contribute to it? Or do you collaborate with other local communities and build a coalition that is representing us to try to impact this corrective legislation?
I will say, clearly Scarborough is not the only community that wants the same fixes. So I've talked to several legislators that are interested in the same things we are. We have the same goals, we're aligned. As far as process goes, we can all testify, but I think it's in front of my committee in particular, hearing from people besides legislators is more impactful, honestly. Because if you hear from the same people all the time, like, oh, that's just their issue or whatever. But if it's the community who's speaking out, commenting, there are, online public comments available. You can participate with testimony by Zoom or in person. Since COVID, that's really opened up quite a bit, that opportunity to participate across the state is increased greatly. And I think for the better. So I would recommend as counselors, as citizens, whoever wants to comment, that's where the impact is. When you are sitting on a committee and you get 200 emails, that's when people start to see trends and notice like, this is a big deal. It's not just one person or one legislator that is their pet issue or whatever. So that's my opinion on it anyway. I think the more you hear from people across the state is really what moves the needle.
I think personally, coming with some measure of solution that's as precise as possible is helpful. And I just want to name again my thought from the beginning, which probably is just echoing what the speaker said, is that Scarborough is unique in many ways. And I would hate to see what's extremely important in this bill about bringing every community in the state to address our affordable housing crisis. I would hate to see where Scarborough has been unique and has been a leader amongst a couple communities, a very small number of communities, frankly, in our state. I would hate to see there to be reforms that did not do the very important things to address our affordable housing crisis. But instead, I would encourage people to be very specific and concrete about how Scarborough is affected and ensuring that we are protecting what we have done and not harming our community for being a leader at the place that we're at. So that's sort of my like 2 steps to it. It may be my perspective, having had so many conversations around this legislation, but I think this bill is very important, but I think Scarborough is in a unique position. So I would just ask, you all are the experts in how the different choices that we've made as a community might impact or relate to the state law, the proposal. So if we can workshop together and if you can be in touch with members of the committee who are wanting to do the right thing, wanting to do the best they can, and explain very specifically about how this bill affects Scarborough specifically.
Tell me about timing for that.
Yeah.
So the bill's probably due soon. I don't know when the deadline was issued to the member who's sponsoring it, but this week, I presume she has to get the bill turned back in for it to be printed. It'll be referenced by either the clerk and the secretary this week, or it'll be referenced when we come into session next Tuesday. And then it needs a 2-week public notice for hearing. So, we're probably looking at the beginnings of February, mid-February for a public hearing.
We can definitely
At
let you
your
know
office.
once that date is set, or even once the bill's printed and we have a better idea when it'll be referenced. I mean, that's easy enough.
Great. Yeah.
It'll be LD 22 something.
Yeah, I have in front of me, and it was an email that was forwarded, and I can't speak to where it originated, but the subject heading was forward LD 1829 fixed bill, emergency legislation, now LD 2173. Obviously,
Potentially, but
we can separately research and confirm that.
I think it went back to the revisor's office though.
Okay.
So I think,
Maybe,
yeah.
sort of getting into inside baseball, but
Yeah.
these things are important. And I think, I know you've heard, I think some of the consternation from some communities was based on the sense that 1829 seemed to kind of come out of nowhere and all of a sudden it was approved and it hadn't been on a lot of people's radar.
Don't make me comment about that. Yes.
So
If there's someone from the public who's listening, if you type in Housing Committee, Maine Legislature, there's what'll come up, there's a state website and there'll be a little listserv where you can sign up to get updates from that committee. So whenever they post, when they're gonna have public hearings in which bill, and the person's name is Representative Amanda Collmore. So that might be a great way just to make sure everyone's in the loop who might be listening.
Thank you. And I just say that just as context, and we talked about that for better or worse, that was at least the perception. So I think part of what where Councilor Kane is coming from is wanting to make sure all of us, including the public, have some sense of the process and the timing.
And I mean, we are in the short session, right? By the time this bill has a public hearing and work sessions, it will probably be early, mid-February. Which, again, we're going to adjourn sometime in April. So again, now knowing, and then there's hundreds of bills, right, that we are processing, but I think it's pretty clear to us that this is a top priority, if not the top priority, with respect to the issues that the council is raising. So that gives us an opportunity to really pay attention to this bill, but there will be a public hearing where any of you or the town or people that live in the town will have the opportunity to testify, and publicly noticed work sessions where we can pay attention, but also as you're paying attention and are hearing things being talked about, have the opportunity to give us feedback and let us know what's, your point of view is on this bill. Ultimately, it will get a vote out of committee and then come up to the legislature for consideration. I think 18, and again, the process of 1829, I don't know if we're gonna get it, but it did come out of committee unanimous, which means from the committee's perspective, they all came to agreement, which I think, accelerated the
usual.
process of this, when this went through the House and the Senate.
You have anything else, Larry? Before.
Finish giving the opportunity, I'll be quick.
Yeah.
If the response is overwhelming and there's tons of public outcry about this and communities and all, is there a process to carry it over without acting on it?
No.
Not this session, because once we adjourn this session for the year, anything that is not acted upon will be dead. Yeah.
Sorry, Scott.
And
So
the
if,
default position is 1829.
right, that's what I was
That's
just gonna add,
Right.
yeah. So if the corrective legislation doesn't go through, 1829 is enacted as,
Yep.
Correct.
okay, thanks.
But I think it's just to be clear. I sponsored LD 1829, that's my bill. I am fully committed to getting this fixed bill passed. And being responsive to communities like Scarborough that have reached out with feedback about how to make the law better. We're not repealing the law. So let me just be, I think I can be pretty, I can forecast that. Like the law is not gonna be repealed. So having productive, constructive feedback about how to make the law better, that is what we want to hear. That is what we're going to do with this bill. And I think we'll make progress. And I will say, that's exactly what we did with LD 2003, because municipalities were at the table from day one throughout that process with LD 2003. A lot of what was in the final product was a result of municipal feedback, even though Maine Municipal Association remained opposed to it to the bitter end, despite my many concessions on LD 2003. On LD 1829, there wasn't much municipal presence to provide that feedback. MMA submitted written testimony. They weren't present physically at the work sessions on the bill. And so I think it's a little unfortunate that we're doing some after the fact revisions. But nonetheless, the law is not in effect yet because we had an implementation date that was kicked out, and we're going to do the right thing now, and I think that's important. And so, to be clear, we're not going to have this thing die on the calendar and adjourn without action. At least I'm not. That's my commitment.
Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, there's a whole lot just got talked about, for me to go over all that. First thing that comes to mind is robbing Peter to pay Paul, an old saying. We talked about trying to get monies from somewhere else. Well, it's all from all of us. I mean, I don't like paying taxes, but, I'm gonna have to pay it to the state. Either way, we're gonna have to pay for it. We have to fix this stuff. Our community, basically in the recent times, so we've been doing a lot of block rental units, big building rental units in the designated build area, because we thought that might be a good thing, but the residents have really pushed back at the, in that Dunstan area, because the traffic is so bad. You've got a 4-lane highway that's just gridlock, and you're gonna add more. And so the people are just upset with it. I think it's great. I've been saying it for years that we should have the ADUs. And I think you should, I'm glad that the state's coming in and saying, because I always said Scarborough should. Even when I was a teenager, I thought, geez, I wished I could just build a garage apartment on a lot, you know, and start with that. But in Scarborough, you can't. It's against the ordinance. You have to build the house and then you can build the garage apartment. Whereas if you build the garage apartment, then you have a family, then you can add a house to it. And then as the family grows, you know, rent it out and get an income from it. Or as you get older, you'll move into that and your kids will move into your house. So I think this is a great thing to do. And I've always been saying it. So I think this bill is a good thing in that respect. The other thing is town of Scarborough has done a lot more development than any other towns. And to set a percentage of the last 5 years on everybody all over, and another town hasn't done hardly any growth, but they only have to do 100% of what they've done. But yet Scarborough, who has had this explosion, now we have to keep doing it, you know? So that is an issue. But I get that, you know, we have to have housing, we have to have low income housing. And, you know, I don't like the idea of the big block apartment units and funneling our youth into renting the rest of their lives, you know? And some people do want that, that's what they want. But I think we should have opportunities to get equity and have lots and designated areas, even if we have to go just the other side of the turnpike into North Scarborough. You know, we have an area there that you could designate, and I think as a council, we should say, you want low-income housing, we're gonna make these small quarter-acre lots, and you have public water, but it will be, you'll have to have a sewer. And then I grew up in Green Acres, and it's half acre, and Pleasant Hill, a lot of quarter-acre lots. And they had septic systems, but they had public water, so they could do it. It's feasible. You can do it. And if you make a small lot with a small house, that's low-income housing. The thing that's happening is everybody wants to build the $700,000 or $800,000 homes, and that's all that's being built because that's where the big money is for the developers. So, you know, if we just say we're going to squash that, and you're not going to be able to do these high-rise apartment units and stuff, it's going to have to be this. If you want to contract a job, here it is, you know. And I think this legislation that's what they're trying to get at. And I think you are trying to get there, but it is very involved and it does. I mean, if you have an explosion in the infrastructure or whatever, it can be an issue. But if you spread it out, instead of just in Dunston, you know, spread it out throughout the community and let people, you know, you don't have to, but if somebody wants to, and then they can have another income, and then that helps them pay their property taxes, you know? So I think we're on the right track, but there is just the legislation to fix as all as it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Yeah, I guess, Kelly, I agree with what you said about, part of what you said about growth, and I think that most people I've talked to just want thoughtful growth, so they're not saying no more growth, no more building. And I think they feel like Scarborough almost is being put into a one-size-fits-all puzzle and being penalized for sort of being the A+ student the last 10 years. So it almost feels like we're being punished for being good in some ways. I also think that the infrastructure piece is real and it's huge. So I think in trying to really focus on thoughtful growth, moving forward, and then having this kind of come our way, it almost felt like we can't even catch our breath. So we were kind of trying to pause and say, what do we do with Payne Road? What do you do with traffic? You know, where do we approve growth so that we don't tend to exacerbate what's happening at Dunston or what's happening over by Costco? And it felt like this was really taking any influence ability out of our hands to make that happen. And I think the other piece is the cost to the taxpayer. When you take a look at, we just hired 8 fire personnel, which is great, and we needed it, but we're playing catch up there. I rode with the police a few weeks ago, and I mean, the amount of calls and issues they're dealing with in town, you know, on Payne Road with all kinds of issues with people coming off the turnpike has exacerbated in the last 5 years. I think John's point around the school, we're finally, you know, where we hope to be with the school plan. And then if you take a look at, you know, if we had to actually execute this as written, I think it's sort of like the middle school opened already overcrowded, and I think that, we were kind of could head in that direction again. So I think it's more just having a plan where maybe we get recognized and sort of have a look back clause. So we say, hey, look what they've done. They've actually exceeded all targets. And there are some of our surrounding towns that literally approved 13 building permits in 2024, and we approved 261. So that feels insane to me. And then when you take a look at the 10-town cohort that the Greater Portland group, highlighted in the report, there were 5 or 6 towns in aggregate that did less affordable housing than Scarborough. I mean, literally 5, 6 of them did 0.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there looking at like, not to call out, but how can Falmouth do 0 and Scarborough do 250? So there just isn't parity. And I think that we all, we have kids in our 20s, they need places to live. I think the targeted growth in Scarborough also, I wouldn't call it middle-class housing. It's certainly not how I started out in my 20s, early 30s, paying $850,000 for a house on a railroad track over on Chamberlain, to me seems like the height of insanity. And you need a $270,000 down payment to live there. So I think it's also just not saying growth, but being more surgical about what do we need? So, thank you.
I agree with you, Michelle, and I actually had written that down. Well, Counselor Doherty was talking about like a variable rate based on past performance instead of one going forward. And I think that's something that is easily, I mean.
Yeah, I think we can
I
definitely
think that could-
tackle
that could
the
go in
rate
there.
of growth aspect of, which is, I think, at the crux of
Yeah.
the concern you all have raised.
That baseline is obviously
Yeah.
Right.
a
Yeah.
huge factor.
Yeah.
Happy to.
Mr. Donovan?
You all being here tonight is very encouraging. And I really want to say thank you because we represent the same people. This is their greatest concern. Therefore, it's our number one priority. And I get an appreciation that you respect and appreciate its importance. So keeping us informed, I think we did feel a little bit out of the loop with the legislation that was passed, but that's in the rearview mirror. Now, we have a town manager, assistant town manager, doors always open. The ability to communicate with us is easy because all you have to do is pick up the phone, call Tom and say, this is what's happening. And that would be what I would ask, that we be kept informed of how this is going so that we can provide you as our representatives with appropriate feedback. Because I heard you say that's what you want. You want to know whether we think what is going forward is in our best interest, Scarborough residents. But thank you.
And actually, on that point, there's been a lot of conversation about infrastructure on roads and water and sewer, school construction. Representative Gatine is the chair of the Appropriations Committee. Pretty important.
Trying to apply.
And
Your favorite legislative.
they heard last year a number of bond proposals. They heard some more at the beginning of the session already. And we anticipate some sort of bond package that would include a number of elements of the bonds that were proposed in individual bills over the last year and a half. There's the caveat that it does require a 2/3 vote in both the House and Senate. So it can't be passed by simple majority, and it will require that Democrats and Republicans and independents find agreement on what this looks like. But there's been a water sewer. I actually sponsored a bill to fund $75 million in improvements to public water, public sewer infrastructure. There's one on school construction. There's one on culverts. There's going to be probably one on roads. And so while I'm sure this fixed bill will be your number one priority and lots of feedback, the Appropriations Committee needs to hear from towns like yours and the citizens that we need to make an investment in those things as well. Because as you've noted, this is, the housing aspect is one leg of the stool, but these other things matter too. And I do fear a little bit that we concentrate all of our attention on fixing the LD 1829, and people don't feel pressure to invest in public infrastructure. And they should feel pressure to invest in it because, and it may make sense, and I don't think any of these bills had this lens, but it may make sense to make those funds available to communities that show the receipts that
Right.
they've done the work. And so maybe we have a bond that has public infrastructure for water and sewer and school construction and roads and bridges and culverts. And you're eligible for the funds if you can show that you've done the work to meet some of our housing demands. Tie it so that those who have those zeros on that chart
Yeah.
aren't benefiting when they aren't feeling the same pressures that you all.
I think there's another bill too that's in front of the housing committee right now that does relate to transportation infrastructure as it relates to housing development.
Yeah.
Specifically, so that maybe it's had a couple work sessions, but I don't think it's been voted on yet. So that's another one that the housing committee is listening to. And so again, trying to tie the issues together as they should be. Anyway, I just remember that one. It's going through too.
And I just want to say, like, thank you for hosting this and bringing us all together. And I just wanted to express, I also it would be great to hear from the public. I'm happy to stay if you just, looking at the time, if you start your council meeting, but I'll be here to listen to folks. And if there's anyone listening digitally, it'd be great to hear and think problem solving and to understand how issues connect together. Is where I'll here to represent all of you, and certainly as well, thank you to our speaker for trying to really seriously address the affordable housing crisis and a long record of doing that, and just understanding that these things are so nuanced and they're so interconnected with so many other issues, and being part of the work.
And I promise to stop driving up Route 1 to 290.
Get on.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Sophie, and certainly I don't think we'll hold it against any one if they don't feel that they can stay for at least the first part of our meeting. But I think given the time we're at right now, we will adjourn this and then we'll have a little bit of a transition break, come back, start at 7. And we do have general public comment toward the beginning of the meeting, which will give the public the opportunity to weigh in. And if there are any, we won't have the opportunity for people to kind of respond back after that in real time. But as always, if there are questions or comments that we get that are unable to be addressed, we can take that up through the council and staff going forward. So I want to thank all of you again. As Councilor Donovan said, most of you sitting there also, represent at least some of our constituents. Understand Speaker Fecto. You obviously in your role as speaker, you in a sense have a broader constituency. We really appreciate you coming and being
I'm
here
only
in
from
person.
a few towns away.
Yeah, so, and I thank the public for being here as well, and to be continued. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. One, two, three, four. One, two. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3.
Good evening and welcome to the January 21st, 2026 meeting of the Scarborough Town Council. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to God, States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
The clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Doherty.
Here.
Counselor Kane.
Here.
Counselor Shute. Here. Counselor Anderson.
Here.
Counselor Donovan.
Here.
Counselor Hayes.
Here.
Chair Fellows.
Here. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is general public comment. This is for anything that is not on our business meeting agenda this evening. I anticipate we may have some comments related to the workshop on 1829 that we just held with our state delegation. We thank those folks again for being here. With that, I will open it up. I just ask you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Please give your name and address. And whoever wants to start, come on up.
Chrissy Maurer, 20 Meeting House Road. I just wanted to thank you for the workshop. It was really important to bring these legislators here. I would have liked to, there's those legs of the stool. I think there's a fourth leg of the stool. It's our marsh, it's our waterways that are going to be impacted. We already have 3, waterways that are deemed impaired. So more pressure around the marsh that hems it in, more pressure on our streams is going to be at this 130% growth rate. So just want to bring that up as another issue. The speaker did say that in the fixes, when I spoke to him, there is proposals to protect waterways. So I was really, really happy to hear that. But just kudos for doing this and for pursuing this for Scarborough. It's just invaluable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve Zamorowski, 19 Teresa Massey Lane. I want to thank everybody for being here today. I'm on the Conservation, Parks and Conservation Land Board and the Housing Authority, Housing Alliance, but I'm not here to speak on their behalf. Just want to talk about the LD 1829 discussion we just had. First of all, Mr. Fecto said, he basically said this, we follow the same process, the normal process for this legislation. If that's the normal process for something that affects us so impactfully, so severely, that it never got this, from my understanding, it never got to a House vote, House discussion. It was in committee. Something that important. I mean, we're not talking about putting your whistle on a PDF. We're talking about something that impacts our whole community. That should go to the full House chambers. Number 2, he also made it sound like we as Scarborough will still be able to manage our growth. I don't believe it. So it's up to us to figure out what that is. How can we manage growth given all the new laws? 3, Scarborough should be totally exempt from the new law because we've done our part. Let somebody else do the work. Let us take our breath and let them catch up. 4, affordable housing. There's nothing in the bill that's about affordable housing. How could we do that? So I would suggest we put more requirements or goals or something, incentives for affordable housing. That includes 60% to 120%. So that's affordable housing and what we call workforce housing. Number 5, that's not our biggest problem in Scarborough. Our biggest problem is that 121% to say 200%. That gives you a house between $470,000 and say $720,000. A house for a medium income couple, 2 earner with 2 kids, is $130,000. That means they can afford a $470,000 home. Has anybody seen one of those? No. So I think we need something in this bill to incentivize builders to build those homes. I agree with Councilor Doherty and Councilor Hayes, believe it or not. We need people to build houses that people can afford in town. Okay, so there should be some tax incentive, something, some initiative, incentive, thank you, for those people to build, because you're right, they build the big houses because they're more profitable. I don't think anybody should get density relief unless they're building houses that people can afford. And number 5, 6, thank you, Denise. We need to do something about not in my backyard. It's not just the state's problem. A lot of times builders build these homes because they don't get the pushback. Okay, people accept those big homes, those big home developers. I think we need to educate, incent, and really promote new kinds of buildings, tiny house villages, the old trailer parks. We need those, row houses, those kinds of things, as well as, things like more new technologies, panel homes, manufactured homes, those kinds of things in our town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Doug Doherty. I live at 10 Dakota's Way in Hollis. The reason I'm here tonight, I am the president of the Saco Pathfinder Snowmobile Club. Back on the December 17th meeting, Order number 25-120 was invoked to rescind the order number 13-44, which designates funds generated by snowmobile registrations to be sent to the Saco Pathfinders. Apparently, there was some miscommunication somewhere along the line. One, we were never notified that this was going to vote. The funds that we get is roughly $2,800 from the town of Scarborough, which means that's 17% of our operating budget. And Mr. Hall pointed out that there were no more snowmobile trails in Scarborough. That's not true. There are still snowmobile trails. Over the past 20 years, you guys that have lived here forever know the development that's gone on in Scarborough. And granted that a lot of the trails were lost, but we still maintain a stretch that's owned by the Scarborough Land Trust off Tapley Road. It's about a mile. And then there's about 3 miles on the power lines. The power lines are the main artery to us, going to Gorham, Buxton, and clubs south of us, Lyman, Waterboro, that want to ride north will use that trail. So the trails still are in place. Granted, they're not what they used to be. We also work with any of the abutting landowners. When we're out doing trail work, we have 2, they call brush hogs. We drag them behind our 4-wheelers. We widen the trails to about 20 feet. Landowners will come out and say, can you run that brush hog up my trail? They're private trails. We don't maintain them, but we'll work with abutting landowners for that. Let's see. Other things that go in, the funds that we use are the signage, the posts. We set up posts for the signs. In the fall, we mark all the trails according to DIFW regulations. In the spring, we go and take all that signage down. All this costs money. We just redecked a bridge out on the power line. The bridge is about 75 feet long. The redecking alone cost us $2,000. So that's where these funds go. And that it's not only Scarborough. We do Saco, we do Dayton, we do Biddeford. All of these towns, including Scarborough, had snowmobile clubs at one time. These clubs all closed for one reason or another, and we've inherited their mileage. So we didn't have to do that, but we wanted to do it because Saco's kind of in a corner. For us to get anywhere, we have to use those lands. So the towns have all given us those funds. So I'm just asking the council to reconsider making a motion to reinstate 1344. It's $2,800. Those are not tax dollars from the tax base of Scarborough. Those are funds just simply generated from snowmobile registrations. They come back to the town, and the towns generally send them to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Callie Harthorn. I live at 12 Stonemuck Road in Scarborough. I just want to thank everyone for being here. I'm here to kind of tell you guys a little bit about myself. So I am a member of Scarborough Pathfinders. I've been a member for as long as I can remember. I remember going out grooming with my dad when I was little, right from our house off Stonebrook. If you guys are familiar with kind of Broad Turn area, I remember when we were little, we used to beg our dad to go snowmobiling right after school. He would pick us up at the bus stop with the groomer. We would go out, hop on the sled, we'd take right off and go, and we would go down to Fuller Field. Those were some of my funnest memories. I remember when I was little, we would bring my friends out on the trails. It's just part of my childhood. I really, really look back on those years, and I remember as a kid just having so much fun out on the trails. And my brother and my sister are here tonight, and all of our friends went with us. We're just a big part of Scarborough, and I really enjoyed the trails, and I would like to keep that memory and driving through Scarborough and looking at the trails and being like, oh, I used to ride there, and my friends went down the brook with us, and oh, I tipped my sled right there. But I just really, really like those memories, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you. We do have at least one person online.
Hello. Greetings, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Thank you for council inviting the representatives to be there. I really appreciate hearing the comments about Scarborough and the growth and the 1829, the bill. I guess, Representative Fecto at the beginning of his talk talked about that you must respect the setback requirements, the height restrictions, the lot coverage, for those. And I guess I'm left with a question. It doesn't have to be answered. I just need to be on record maybe is who's going to be respecting that? Who's going to enforce those building codes and those restrictions? As of now, I mean, I've not heard that much about ADUs till the last kind of year and a half. I live at 16 Ocean Avenue in Scarborough. And I have noticed that ADUs, there's no mother-in-law living in the back and there's no homeowner living in the front, but they're renting both units to make money on both units. And the setbacks, maybe ADUs don't need setback requirements or height restrictions or lot coverages. Maybe that needs to be clarified, but needs to be enforced. I did call one time to the planner and the building code manager, and he told me that they must have a good reason. That was his answer. That's not a good answer for me, because I think that it's getting out of hand down at Higgins Beach, especially with people buying homes for millions of dollars and tearing them down and putting two homes up on them and then renting them both. And it seems to be happening, and I just would like to know how those would be enforced, as well as how 1829 would be enforced. So if I wanted to, could I sell my home to a developer for like $3 million? And then he tear my home down and put up a high rise that adheres to the setbacks and the height and put 4 dwellings there and then charge rent. I'm afraid that something like that could or might happen. And I hope that Scarborough has things enforced somehow for that to not happen with this bill 1829, because sometimes some of it feels a little kind of loose, at least from what I read from your website, about allowing more units, prohibiting required planning board approval, things like that. So I would just make sure that there are the rules and the plans and the codes that are in place are enforced. Because I put an addition on our house a few years ago, and if I would have called it an ADU, I could have put 2 bedrooms and a bathroom off the back and been just as happy. And I couldn't do that. So I don't know. I guess what's good for one has to be good for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have another one online.
No, you should be able to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. My name is Mo Erickson. I live at 288 Pine Point Road. I have always lived in Scarborough, down Pine Point. There are 2 things I wanted to bring up. And one is, I wish we did not use the Public Works resource to go around and pick up Christmas trees. Nobody delivers a tree to me, so I go and get mine, as I think most people do. And I just throw it in my backyard and let the birds live in it. I just think it's a waste of Public Works guys. When I see all the trash on the side of the road, I would much rather have them spend time picking up the trash than picking up Christmas trees for private, homes. That's my own little thing. I'm not a Grinch. I just think it's a silly way to use our time and resources. The other thing I wanted to mention is just that, we certainly, Scarborough has done our share for housing, and I think it's definitely time to put the kibosh on it. I think if you have an attic you want to renovate and throw an apartment above your home or above your garage, that's one thing, but I certainly don't think you should be able to build houses on your property and just add to the craziness that is Scarborough. And that's all, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any general public comments? Amarda?
Hi, my name's Angelina Hawthorne. I live at 12 Stonebrook Road. Adding on to what Callie said, as well as Saco Pathfinders, ever since I was little, I remember going out with my dad and my family and my friends on the snowmobile trails, as well as maintaining the bridges and building them. And I remember specifically off of so I live off of Broad Turn Road, and then we would go right from my house and get on the trail, and by Beach Ridge Speedway in my old friend's little neighborhood, there was a big gully, and bring the drags are really heavy, and we built a bridge out of sticks, and every year we'd have to rebuild it. And I remember it was so much fun being out there with my dad and like rebuilding the bridges with a stick so all of our snowmobiles could get over there, and like just like being outside together and then building an actual bridge. And even when my brother Landon was little, he would go out with my dad and he'd have the hammer and he'd be like, "Dad, can I hammer this in?" And it's such like a big part of my childhood, as well as like in the Nunsuch River on Fuller Farm Field or Fuller Field or whatever that trail is called. We would snowmobile from my house, and my dad would put the snowshoes on the drag or the cross country skis, and we'd snowmobile there. And then as a reward for snowmobiling there and making it there, we would snowshoe around the trail, and then we would like race our family back, and we'd be like, I'm gonna beat you back, just to get back on the snowmobiles and go up on the trails and look at like all the nature and everything. And that's a really important part of my childhood. So having those trails and like maintaining them, that's really important. And I think that that's something that needs to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Do one more online and then we'll go back to the podium. Thanks.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. And this is public comment not on the agenda, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I have a little speech here and I have 3 minutes, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Go for it.
Ladies and gentlemen of the City Council, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I stand before you as a proud American, unapologetically pro-white, pro-law, and pro-ICE. Our nation was built by hard work and values of white Europeans who forged this land in the beacon of freedom it once was. But today that heritage is under siege from waves of illegal invaders who drain our resources, commit crimes, and erode our culture. Let's be clear, ICE is the thin blue line protecting us from this chaos. They risk their lives daily to enforce our borders and laws and keep our communities safe. Yet the radical leftists scream abolish ICE while holding their own hypocrisy. We've seen their violence firsthand, Antifa thugs riding in the streets, smashing windows, assaulting patriots, all while the police stand by and shield those criminals, leftists. Why? Because corrupt officials bend to the woke mob, letting anarchists run wild without consequences. And speaking of consequences, let's have a good laugh at Renee Good. This fool tried to play hero by charging ICE with her car, only to get popped like a balloon at a kid's party. Talk about natural selection.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate you joining our meeting. Anyone else for public comment?
Jim Pritchard, Maple Ave. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but John raised most of the issues I was going to raise on 1829. But a couple
Tends to
things that
happen.
weren't opposed. The bill does not address the major developers coming into town dictating prices on land or whatever. I think the bill should clarify that, put some kind of restriction. The bill doesn't take, let me put it this way. What is the difference between workforce housing and affordable housing? What goes into those numbers? Does it take in property tax, sewer bills, water bills, electrical? Or does it just take in the cost of the property and the value of the home? If that is the case, then the bill is putting an unmandated mandate on the town to pay for the extra services. I'm not sure where the growth area is in Scarborough now, but if it's in North or West Scarborough, the added septic tanks and the runoff from the leach beds, how's it going to affect the rivers and streams? How are the additional houses going to affect wells in that area? I think I attended all of the meetings with Cupcakes with the council. And North Scarborough, there were a number of people that raised the issues that they are having trouble with their wells now. What happens if so many houses are built, additional wells put in? Who's going to pay to put the water line in? there's a lot of questions. That bill needs to be clarified. And sitting on the school building committee, I'm really concerned with the numbers that they came up with. In a matter of 8 or 9 years, we're gonna have to look for land again. Because I don't see us, and the land would have to be in North or West Scarborough. I just don't see any land this side of the turnpike that would take on another school. The last thing, I hope that the bill clarifies the setbacks and simple language. Because if a major developer comes in and there's any question on what the language says, I see a lawsuit coming and the town's going to be paying for that, not the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Allison Bristol, Bayview Avenue. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but first I want to thank the council and our representatives for being here. I think it was a very productive hour and a half. I was kind of relieved to hear that there's corrective legislation, although the percentage over 5 years doesn't sound like it's going to be a good fix for Scarborough. So I hope that that gets remedied. I wanted to respond to Mary Ellen Newth, who called in about the Higgins Beach zoning. Because if I was going to speak, what I was going to say is, all you have to do is look at the Higgins Beach Character Code that was adopted in 2015 to see what can happen. We have 5,000 square foot lots. And we've been allowed to build ADUs since the character code was adopted. And to answer Ms. Newth's question, an ADU can be built within 3 feet of a property line. So I think that part of what the council needs to do is to go back and look at the designated growth areas in town. Higgins Beach is actually a growth area. When the comprehensive plan was done, there were villages, areas that were identified as villages, and those villages are growth areas. We've been the most dense neighborhood in Scarborough for a long time, and there's no place to go, and people are building huge homes with what used to be a full-size cottage now in their backyard, and that's only going to continue. It's nothing that's affordable. Higgins Beach, if you go back far enough, was a middle-class enclave. There were school teachers that had little cottages there, and the town still promotes Higgins as a quaint neighborhood. There's nothing quaint about it anymore. It's turning into the Hamptons, and it's turning into something that is totally unaffordable for the folks that might have been there. I like to consider myself 3rd generation at Higgins because of the history of my property, and people are being forced out. And the other thing I wanted to say about the whole idea of this bill is at council meetings, if you go back far enough, and I hear Jean Marie in my ear talking about predictability. So where is the predictability for people who have spent their lives being able to have a home that they can comfortably retire in? You have no idea what's going to happen on either side of you, nor do you have any idea if you're going to be able to afford to stay in that home that you worked 50+ years for. So I hope the council will do everything in its power to shore up against the state legislation. It sounds like it's going to get better, and thank you for that. But I think there's work to be done in Scarborough to try to protect its citizens. Thank you so much for doing this workshop. It was great.
Thank you.
I'm Karen Lothrop. I'm going to be calling in behalf of Linda Libby, who lives on the Running Hill Road. If you go from Sam's Club and then take a left and go by Target and go up over the hill, take a left, and that's the Running Hill Road. She has been operated on twice. She's had a lot of people coming in to take care of her, plus my sister and I. I almost got hit twice going out of that road. She has sent a petition 2 years ago to the police chief with no response. They said, yeah, we know about it and all that. I'm telling you, that is the most dangerous spot in Scarborough, that road. She is her land adjoins Blue Cross and Blue Shield. So when you go up over the hill and you're coming out of her driveway, they're coming down over the hill and they're going up over the hill. Sometimes they don't even have their lights on at night, the cars at 4 o'clock or 4:30. I almost got creamed the other day. I don't know why that nobody's gotten killed there. Second, and now the second one is running a no turn on a red light. Going down Running Hill Road to take a right to go by Sam's Club. They go through that light all the time. And also on the Vine, they go through that light, no turn on right. Either make the signs big enough or put a blinking light or something, because it's dangerous when you're going back and forth and the people are going to the right, and then all of a sudden they're all going to the right. And then when you start to go out, you can't get out there because they've already gone. But the danger to me is the Running Hill Road. And I don't know who can look into it, whether it's Public Works or what, but there's got to be signage because her driveway is a U shape. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Denise Hamilton, Two Rod Road. Believe it or not, I don't have anything prepared, but I just wanted to thank all of you as well as the delegation coming this evening to talk about a very important topic that many taxpayers in Scarborough have obviously through 3 surveys have commented on. It's nice to hear that possible changes. Not sure how much they're going to help us. You know, as all of you know, taxpayers have asked numerous times about moratoriums. Maybe the state should issue a moratorium on Scarborough, giving us a free pass for a period of time, like has been suggested, till other towns catch up. Speaker Fecto was the first to say after this passed last year that Scarborough has become the fastest growing town in the state, and it's about time others caught up. So give us a pass and let everybody else catch up. Let us catch our breath and come up with a better plan for the future of everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Try one more online.
Hold your breath.
Liam, you should be able to speak if you unmute yourself.
Yes. Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name's Liam Erickson. I live on Pine Point Road. I'm a commercial shellfish harvester, and I've dug clams for over 15 years now. As I understand, one of the items on the agenda this evening is amendments to the fee structure of the shellfish licenses. I understand that the prices of things go up, shellfish license included. I'm aware that it hasn't been adjusted in quite some time, quite a long time. But I do believe that a 100% increase is a bit much. The next thing I would like to say in regards to the shellfish license, as I understand it, it was conveyed that the average shellfish harvester in Scarborough digs 46,000 pounds of clams, roughly, or a figure close to that per year. I think that's a little steep, and I just hope that was not considered too heavily when thinking of the change in license cost. Additionally, the average price of clams per pound that was cited by our marine or our harbor master, I don't think that was quite accurate. $4.50 a pound all year. No way. the third thing I'd like to say is that the yields of clams this year, the past couple years has gone down. And I just would like to remind the council that this is a resource that fluctuates greatly. And in future years, we might get even less clams than we got in the past. So I understood at the last meeting that was discussed, and I just wanted to sort of respectfully disagree with some of the figures that the harbor master cited. That's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Again, this general public comment period is for items that are not on the agenda. We certainly appreciate those comments. We'll file those away for when we get to that item, and we will have opportunity for public comment when we get to that point, as well as our other action items. Does anyone else have any comments on items that are not on our agenda this evening? Do we have anyone else online?
Thanks, Rich.
Okay.
Greetings from 112 Maple Ave. My name's Andy Blanchard. I just wanted to say that I support 1829 as I think it helps the little guy a lot more with its ADU requirements rather than the 50 to 100 unit conglomerates that everyone's complained about over the past few years. I think there's a lot of good things that can come out of it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other general public comment? Anyone else online, Liam?
One more.
Okay.
Just didn't know if the chair wanted me to remind you of some council rules on decorum, if that's appropriate for public comment. I just want to point per council rules.
Absolutely.
The public comment, we just want to remind people that persons will strive to be accurate in their statements and avoid making comments that are obscene, threatening, or disruptive. So that's just in your council rules. So I thought it might be a point of order.
Appreciate that. And we do being, recognizing the sanctity of free speech in the First Amendment, we generally have tried to err on the side of being a little bit more permissive. Perhaps I let that go a little longer than I should have, but we do need to draw the line somewhere. So I do appreciate that, Liam.
We have one more public comment, if you'd like to entertain it.
Absolutely.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Johnny. I live at 318 Beach Ridge Road. And thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to read a thank you letter that I have written here, if you wouldn't mind. Tonight, I would like to express my immense gratitude to the brave men and women of ICE Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I applaud you all for your tireless dedication to keeping our nation safe. Your work is not only challenging, but also essential in upholding the rule of law and protecting our white communities. Every day, you face complex
All right,
and
that's enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Does anyone else have
No, like he said.
any other general public comment? And then otherwise we will move on. Good. All right. Thanks, everyone. The next item is approval of minutes from the January 7th, 2026 regular town council meeting. Do we have a motion?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Adjustments to the agenda, there are none. Items to be signed, treasurer's warrants, I signed those prior to the meeting. Item number 8 is the town manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to be concise and move through this quickly this evening. Scotty Hill Road, just a recurring item. We are quickly approaching the point we'll be reporting the results of our kind of evaluation. Council scheduled a workshop for February 4th. I would note that though we've been pursuing a grant for the closure and restoration of the stream because that was what was available. A new grant was just opened 10 days ago or so, and that's for kind of the conventional culvert replacement. And we certainly are pursuing that as well. We just simply did not have the opportunity until now. So look forward to that, and there'll be certainly materials to follow. I don't think I need to speak to LD 1829. We beat that to death. Just to make you aware, budget development is well underway at the staff level. For your purposes, we have put on the calendar the date of March 25th for my presentation that with myself and the superintendent of schools. Typically, we do that as a standalone presentation, and then the council would consider first reading the budget at your next regular meeting following that. Finance Committee, for its purpose, has had some conversation around what process it would like to follow for budget review. And it does appear as though they prefer to have kind of two longer sessions, 4-hour perhaps blocks. And we've circled April 13th and 14th for that. I believe there's 2, if not 3 meetings available to them should they need additional sessions for budget review. With respect to the assessor process, we are moving through the recruitment process. In fact, tomorrow we have scheduled second round interviews for 2 candidates that have come through the first round process. I'm pleased that Council Chair Fellows will be joining us tomorrow. We're essentially on track to bring a name forward for your consideration at perhaps your next meeting. That's my plan. I will say both folks we're talking about are talking to our incumbent assessors. So just to manage expectations, I would expect them to give an adequate notice to their employer. It's probably the end of February, 1st of March before we have someone on board, which is really the timeline that I've been working on right along. In the meantime, our interim assessor is doing a fine job. Just a quick update. I did attend the Transportation Committee meeting last week. I was very interested in 2 agenda items. One was an update from Metro regarding the micro transit initiative. They are close to finalizing at least the initial proposal for the service area for microtransit. And on that point, we would like to schedule a workshop with council to share that and really kind of the final elements to leading up to the launch of that project sometime in April. So I'll work with council leadership to grab some time in front of council, but that project is exciting. Very pleased to have it advancing. Also on that agenda, the deputy commissioner from DOT was in attendance along with the DOT planning office, and they were introducing kind of a reset to the Gorham Connector project. They're rebranded it and they're calling it Portland West. I truly got the sense, and Councilor Anderson was there, he can certainly speak to it later, that they understood that the last process was failed in many respects, and have really committed themselves to a thorough public process. For our purposes, I offered Scarborough because the reality is most of the improvements, whether it's new road or fixing existing roads, will occur within our boundaries. That I offered to be a lead, so to speak, in terms of providing space and coordination for public meetings. So excited to have that started and really excited about the process that they seem to be laying out. Several road project updates. The Pine Point waterline replacement, you may recall, we were scheduled to pave almost the entirety of the Pine Point neighborhood last year, only to learn that the water company is interested in replacing almost all the water lines in that area. And so understandably, we held that project off. That project will start up in February, and very pleased with how quickly they worked through design. And I've assured the residents that it will be completed before the summer season, before July 1st. And then we'll come in and do our paving after the summer, sometime in the fall of this year. Staying in Pine Point, East Grand Avenue project, the design plans are now available for review, so we're collecting comments. We have been very active advocating for inclusion of this project in the DOT work plan, and I learned today that it has been included, which will mean we'll have access to state and federal monies. There are other requirements that come with that, but I think it's very, very good news. And there's a public meeting on February 10th. Point of that is to really continue to collect public input on the proposed design. Spurwink Phase 2, this will be from essentially Pleasant Hill Road to the Cape Line. Has been awarded to Shaw Brothers. They were the low bidder. That work will be completed before Memorial Day, so it will be happening in earnest, coming right up. I also want to mention in the kind of transportation vein, the Route 1 project that DOT has been working on. They have not yet filed for a federal grant. They intend to. We're really in line for next year. And thankfully, they continue through the design process. Typically, they will not even proceed through design until they have some sense of construction funding, but this is a bit different. One of their current proposal for design modifies the lanes and reduces them in some respects. Essentially, because of permit limitations or requirements, they're not able to expand that roadway through the marsh. They need to limit the amount of impact on the marsh for obvious and good reasons. And so there's a finite amount of pavement. And the question is, how do we use that? We see this as our best and maybe last opportunity to get safe pedestrian access across our marsh, which really does not exist today. And so with that in mind, they provided for that in their design, but that's at the expense of vehicular traffic. There's, again, only so much real estate. So at this point, they're proposing 2 southbound lanes that will be permanent and 1 northbound lane across the majority of the marsh. Obviously, at either end, it will turn back to 2-lane section approaching the intersections. We appreciate that's a huge change. And DOT, to the credit, is interested in doing a pilot or demonstration project where they would simulate this with certain traffic devices, if you will. So I mentioned that staff is engaged, and we have been very, I think, consistent with them that this is a big deal, and we want to make sure our public is aware of these plans. So I'll continue to keep you updated, but we'll push for more public process in that regard. Lastly, I just want to say that Hannaford Supermarkets has been the subject of a campaign of sorts. Perhaps you've seen them on TV ads, radio. Portland Press Herald has covered it quite consistently over the last week or so. I have been reached out to by the organizers of that so-called campaign twice now, looking for my involvement. I've chosen not to acknowledge the email, certainly not provide comment. The entity is the New England Consumer Alliance, and they're a nonprofit advocating for a fairer marketplace. And they're interested in getting comment from me in particular. Has to do about prices at the grocery store. I just want to make you aware that the contact was made to me, and I choose not to respond at this point. And lastly, I will reach out to Mr. Doherty, who was here representing the Saco Pathfinders. He's provided information that I was not aware of, and I'll certainly relate that back to you. And perhaps I'll do it through leadership, and we can talk about how to advance that matter. Thank you.
Tom, did you want to introduce the quarterly financial update?
I forgot that.
Yeah.
Yes, included as part of my packet were the quarterly financial updates. Obviously, Norm Kildau is here. He's hard to miss. He's available to provide some high-level comments should you wish, or they could kind of rest as they are.
Most boring presentation you'll ever get. We're exactly where we need to be. We expect to be on the expenditures. Revenues are as we anticipated, and no issues to report. I like boring.
Boring can be good. Does anyone on the council have any questions for Norm?
I don't have
John?
questions for Norm, but I have questions for Tom.
Sure, yeah. So there's nothing for Norm. Let's grill Tom. All right, go ahead.
Tom, you forgot to mention that when the bus service comes, that you're gonna ride it for a week to work, right? Isn't that what you committed to?
I failed to mention that, Counselor, yes.
Just wanted it on the record.
I'll need a videographer for that.
Yeah, I guess it caught my attention on the Route 1. I just rate off, I mean, we can get input from public, but I cannot see having 2 lanes going south and 1 north. I think that's what you said, or east and west. I can't imagine reducing that from a 4-lane to a 3. I go across there quite often, and I very rarely see a pedestrian in there, and maybe it's because it's so dangerous. But I think that again, you have Dunstan that's a gridlock, and you're gonna keep it jammed up back there because they can't get across the marsh. That doesn't make sense at all. So we got to tell the state that that's not going to work. I mean, there is a walking path. I have seen people walking across AU. There is room beside the road to be able to walk. And I assume bike too. I think if anything, as much as I hate it, because in Dunstan, if you get up by the fire station past the lights, the lanes are very narrow there, and it really should be widened. And if you could maybe get away with doing that on the marsh too, you physically can pass by people, but it makes it very difficult. And to sacrifice that to be able to have an actual bike lane, maybe, but I would lean towards keeping it just the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the civil point is, I think DOT is going to look very heavily at what we want there. And we were just wanting to be clear up front that pedestrian safety and multimodal transportation is an important consideration. So this is the consequence of that. Yeah, I think if there's feedback from Scarborough that we don't want that, I think I'm hopeful to listen to it. But I appreciate that they have taken our initial comments into design consideration.
So, Tom, what is the deadline or what does that timeline look like? So people want to give comment or we want to, allow people.
Yeah, I don't know. In fact, this is kind of hot off the press.
Okay.
I know we've been generally aware of this idea. Just actually Friday last week, we received an email about this pilot project. So I think there'll be a lot more. For our purposes, we'll use all of our communication channels to advise what we're doing and what the communication loop or process will be. So the intent is to test it and get feedback.
Great, thanks.
Did you say how long it would be tested and demonstrated?
I don't, those details have not been sorted through yet. Again, I think it's, I appreciate the DOT is wants to try this before they spend the money and actually do it. I'll say as an aside, we've also learned that Saco is interested in doing some lane assignment changes in their section of Route 1 as very close to our border. If you can picture that stretch of Route 1, it's very, very wide.
Yeah.
And they're talking about potentially going down to 3 lanes in some places. We may or may not want to be part of that because we share the road in common, obviously. So this is something that they're considering up and down and all across our transportation systems.
I will say, for my part, I do appreciate, as you said, Tom, that the state is at least trying to be attentive. I mean, I know we've had conversations in the past about the fact that, no offense to engineers, but you don't necessarily want your whole project designed by an engineer. And we want some of my best friends who are engineers, but it tends to be, I appreciate the fact that the town is advocated for and the state is at least trying to be somewhat responsive to our prior statements about wanting to, knowing that this is kind of the one bite at the apple in our lifetimes anyway, that we don't want it to just be some strictly utilitarian thing. And we want it to be as pedestrian friendly as possible and hopefully at least somewhat attractive. So that'll be a process and cost is always a factor.
Yeah, not to be dramatic, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
It is a lifetime, almost generational decision. They're building essentially a bridge, and the width of that bridge will not change over a very long period of time. So what we do today, we're gonna have to live with for a long time.
Yep. Anyone else have any comments or questions on the report?
One more thing that I just thought of as far as the marsh and the concept. You talk about it being a bridge and the footprint of the road, can it be elevated and as the top of the bridge out over the marsh, but not impacting the marsh as a bike lane? Could that be a concept? I don't know.
I can bring that to them. The bridge section is only about 75 feet long. It really just spans the two river threads. So it's not.
It isn't the full length.
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Okay.
I should say the rest of the marsh section across the marsh is raised about 5 feet. But there's actually a bridge where the culverts sit today.
Yeah, but you could continue the bike lane as like a bridge on the side of the road that's not filling in the marsh but it's I don't know what the price of that, I can imagine what the price of that would be.
We're at risk of having a design charrette break out here. Right. Anything else on the town manager's report? Okay.
Thank you.
Your next job is to find the money, Scott.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The state will pay for it.
Next item, standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. We start down this end. Do you have anything, Michelle?
I do not, thank you.
Thank you. John?
Yep, comms met, we are in process of trying to plan out our next, what we're calling conversations with counselors instead of cakes with counselors.
This is communications. You're
Yeah.
using that, you're getting a
Yeah.
little jargony there.
Yep. And so we are, they're in process, so I should be able to provide the council with those dates and times in February. Again, it would be nice to have everybody attend at least one. I think we'll have 7 or 8 opportunities for everybody to be able to go to. We talked about doing that on essentially a quarterly basis, so doing them in February, doing them in April to align with budget, and then September and December. So that's something that we'll work on planning as we get closer. We also talked about penciling in a date for the Scotto Hill Road Counselor Corner Live. And I believe we settled on February 12th, which is the same night as the Finance Committee. So if we could just make sure we end the Finance Committee at 6:30 that night, so then we can go to the Public Safety Building to have the Scotto Hill Road Counselor Corner Live. At least the committee members will be here, so hopefully, I'm assuming we'll want to go and we can go and participate there. We also met with Coastal Marketplace, which is in your mail, you're getting a lot of the coupons and things that come in weekly on Fridays. Yeah, we were interested in understanding what the cost would be to have something as an insert in there, because when we did the Cakes with Counselors, we heard from a lot of people that they still want paper communication, and while staff has been doing a lot more, we're looking to do more potentially. So we asked staff to continue to explore that and come with a budget of what that would look like to maybe do 1 full-page insert once a month with, I think, 8-page inserts maybe once or twice a year, just to price that out and see what that would mean in terms of budget in case the council wanted to do it. I think rough back of the napkin math was $30,000, which equates to $3 that we would be asking for a budget increase if we felt like it was important to get more paper in people's hands. And so that's something that we've asked them to explore. They're also working on, to support our goals a little bit, elevating transportation and growth websites more on the webpage. So if you haven't looked on the website, we have a really great transportation page that lists all the projects and things that are happening. And so they're kind of mirroring that with growth so that you can see all the projects that are in the pipeline in the planning board, where they're at in town, and just trying to make sure that we have that information much more visible to the public. And so that's some of the things we've been working on. And just for transportation, like Tom said, 2 really exciting projects that came forward. For the Portland West, I will say I was skeptical going in, but I was very pleased with DOT, especially the deputy commissioner. And I felt she was genuinely starting this from scratch. She shared that MTA is not included in the process at this point because she wants to really take a step back, re-engage, and build something from the ground up, and doesn't want a preconceived solution that she's being tasked to drive. And so I really believed her through the conversation, and I think the focus on public engagement and trying to build the solution, I think, will be really important and something that they're committed to doing, and I believe them. So hopefully, I believe what they said was it'll probably be until like April 2027 until their process is complete in terms of public engagement and getting a potential solution in place. So it's not going to be quick, but they're going to go through the right steps. So I think that was just really positive.
Great, thank you. Bill?
Yeah, the Sustainability Committee met this morning. It took up a few items, but the principal one that caught my attention was took up the idea of a statewide Superfund style initiative to charge polluters for damage done over many decades. And this would obviously be oil industry It's in the early stages. Several other towns are interested in the idea. So more to come on that one. They also discussed the next Sustainable Scarborough Day, decided that it was definitely something they wanted to do, and they wanted to do it better than they did the last one. We'll hear more from that in the future. And Jamie Fitch staffs the committee, and I would want to point out she does a very good job. Not just because she's a big fan of plovers. The Appointments and Negotiations Committee also met, and while this is a bit tedious, I need to read into the record the action that was taken. Board of Assessment Review, appoint David Bork as a full voting member with a term to expire 2028. Leroy Crockett as a full voting member with a term to expire 2027. Jean Marie Katerina as first alternate with a term to expire 2027, and Rebecca Hatt as second alternative with a term to expire 2028. Coastal Waters and Harbor Advisory Committee, appoint Mike Slavin and Tyler Davis as full voting members with terms to expire 2028. Community Services Advisory Board, appoint Brittany Jackson as a full voting member with a term to expire 2027. Darrell Wright and Dennis Meehan as full voting members with a term to expire 2028. Carolina Sands as first alternate with a term to expire 2028, and Mike Slavin as second alternate with a term to expire 2028. Conservation Commission, appoint Kathleen Miller as a full voting member with a term to expire 2028. Christine Lavery as a full voting member with a term to expire 2026. Creighton Silsby as a full voting member with a term to expire 2027. Carrick Gamble as first alternate, term to expire 2028. Caitlin Berry, second alternate, term to expire 2028. Long Range Planning Committee, appoint Robin Saunders as a full voting member with a term to expire 2028. And Jean Marie Katerina as a full voting member with a term to expire 2027. Edge Hodgen as a full voting member with a term to expire 2028, and Rebecca Hatt as first alternate with a term to expire 2028. Parks and Conservation Land Board, appoint Anton Bodor as a full voting member with a term to expire 2027. Betts Armstrong as a full voting member with a term to expire 2028. And Susan Williams as second alternate with a term to expire 2028. Personnel Board of Appeals, appoint Amanda Doherty as a full voting member with a term to expire 2028. Appoint Penny Whitney as Dorian as a full voting member with a term to expire 2026. Brittany Jackson as first alternate, expire 2027. Susan Williams, second alternate, expires 2028. For the Planning Board, appoint Rick Meinking and James Hebert as full voting members with a term to expire 2028. Appoint Tyler Davis as a full voting member with a term to expire 2027. William Sedlak as first alternate, expires 2026. Carrick Campbell as second alternate term with a term to expire 2028. Scarborough Housing Alliance Committee, appoint Stephen Zamorowski and Mayor Hazanoff as full voting members, terms to expire 2028. Shellfish Conservation Commission, appoint Noah Migran, Eric Quirk, Robert Willett as full voting members, all to expire 2028. Sustainability Committee, appoint Deb McDonough and Lydia Jopp as full voting members with a term to expire 2028, and Deb McDonough does a terrific job on that committee. Transportation Committee, appoint Portia Hirschman with a term to expire 2028. Tree Care Advisory Board, appoint Andrew Mackey as a full voting member with a term to expire 2029. And lastly, Zoning Board of Appeals, appoint Richard Silkman as a full voting member with a term to expire 2028. Joseph Doherty as a full voting member, term to expire 2026. Michael Campbell as a first alternate with a term to expire 2026. And Rebecca Hatt as second alternate, term expires 2028. Thank you.
We're busy.
All right.
Done.
Give them some oxygen.
Everything Bill just said for the appointments committee is my update. I don't have anything else to report on.
And the tree committee is new and we're looking for volunteers for that. So let's put that out there too. Yes, yep, but that's getting formed. So the planning board actually met last night and they actually had a short agenda, 2 items, only 4 members were there. It was Arby's again. They want to take over half the parking lot at Little Dolphin and put an Arby's there. We'll see how they kind of work that out. We'll see. And then they are proposing 24 unit apartments at the end of Broad Turn, 17 Broad Turn, which, you know, we're keeping our eye on. They're coming back. You know, we have the Phillips Brook, which is an urban impaired stream right there. So I'm definitely interested to see how they kind of navigate that moving forward. The Conservation Commission changed their meeting. They're meeting February 2nd. So that'll be this that Monday on the 2nd. And then I want to thank the committee, the council for putting me on the Eco Maine board, because I went to the first board meeting this last week and I'm right where I need to be. The Portland Water District gave this really enthralling presentation on thermal processing of trash. And actually, I thought it was really interesting. And then we funded 2 studies. One of the studies is to explore more efficient ways for residents to compost. So maybe putting compost right in your trash. And then another one was to explore combining municipalities to get a better rate with trash collectors. I guess there's really not a lot of competition up here. So they're going to be doing studies on maybe joining forces with other communities to try to bring in outside contractors. I just thought that was interesting. My first meeting, I thought all of it was interesting. So that was Eco Maine. And then we had the ordinance committee that met last week, and you will see on our agenda this evening, all of our work is coming forward, which is great. And then so far for February for ordinance, I think the big meaty thing is going to be the short-term rental. We're going to have our first round of that coming. Okay.
Thank you. Larry?
Finance met, we first covered impact fees, and with some advice from Karen Martin at Sedco, she wanted to engage the business community to some degree. We approved a communication that she was putting out, and that's already happened. And that also is letting them know about when we consider this at council, they'll have opportunity for comment if they choose. And we are doing that. That'll come before council the first time for February 4th. The beach fees we reviewed with input from staff, community services input from staff, and decided to leave the fees exactly the way they were for 2025 into 2026. I had actually asked about some changing a few things for the morning hours and evening hours, but I think they gave great feedback about that those fees have changed every year over the last 3 years, and we needed to just kind of let it play out a little bit. And so we, in effect, tabled that. We didn't take any action on it. We started defining the calendar for the budget process, and Tom spoke to a couple of those dates already, excuse me. And we started, if you remember last meeting, we talked about the grant application and approval process and how we might change that moving forward. And Tom is committed to kind of giving us some parameters around that. We talked about what are the thresholds that council might approve or even hear about grant funding. And so we'll continue to work on that. Community services will not meet till February. The Chamber of Commerce next meeting is Monday, the 26th. And the school committee has been formed and met for the first time, elected their chair and vice chair and all. So that's starting to go with a cadence of meeting monthly. That's everything again.
Thank you. Scott?
Yeah, Harbor Committee did meet. They talked about what's on the agenda tonight, the fees and whatever. Yeah, there was talk about how much the clam diggers make, and I think it is exaggerated. I think they do better than they used to, and it's like, I think it's good. They're finally getting paid for their hard work, you know? I think it's fine, and I don't think we should base our fees on what we think they might be making. The other thing we talked about was a new boat. They're gonna get a new boat. I think the boat they had was a fiberglass one, and they're gonna get an aluminum one. I think we were fine with the boat we had. I know outboards can be, problems, and maybe you need a new outboard, but I didn't think we needed a new boat, but there was nothing ever brought. It was the first I heard of it. It was never brought before the council or anything. Evidently, it's just in their budget to be able to spend that much money. If there's that much money in their budget, maybe we ought to think about how big their budget is and maybe cut that budget a little bit. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Before we move on, I probably should have mentioned, I think I did last time, that long-range planning did not meet this month. They'll meet next in February. And just to put a cap on the appointments topic, that was a pretty full agenda, as you kind of hear, and that didn't include the candidates who did not get appointed. And I do want to thank everyone who has continued to step up, and people who are returning and getting reappointed, and folks who are new people who are stepping up. And we are seeing an influx, certainly, and some turnover, particularly with the term limits. So I'm looking forward to getting all those seated and moving forward.
And thank the town council's, the town clerk's office, because it's a lot of paperwork, and it's very well organized, and allows me to go through with my committee members in prompt order, but it's a lot of work. Thank you.
Right, absolutely. Thank you. No resolutions or proclamations at this time, so we will move on to public hearings. First, order number 26-003, a 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the new request from Zhu Min Zheng for a medical cultivation facility cannabis license located at 10 Snow Canning Road, unit number 8. Kristen?
Thank you. This applicant is new to the town of Scarborough. However, medical cultivation being in Unit 8 at 10 Snow Canning, there has been a licensee in that space within the past 12 months, so the 1,000-foot buffer does not apply to them. They were inspected by the cannabis team. There's a few minor things that they are working through. So if approved tonight, we will hold that until all those are corrected.
Great. Thank you. We do have the opportunity for public comment. Does anyone like to speak on this? Seeing none, I don't think we have anyone online. We'll turn back to the council. Do we have a motion?
Moved. Second.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? We will vote then. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. The next item, order number 26-004, 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the request for, I believe it's request for a new massage establishment license from Kelly Lynn Rinaldi, doing business as Maine Laser Skincare and Med Spa, located at 438 US Route 1, and a massage license from Morgan Boylard, working at Maine Laser Skincare and Med Spa, located at 443 US Route 1. Back to the clerk.
This is a business who's been in Scarborough for a while. They're looking to expand services, which would include massage. They are in compliance with everything in the clerk's office and other departments.
Great, thank you. Again, we have opportunity for public comment. If there's anyone? Seeing none? We have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All right, move second. Any discussion on this? No? We'll vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Next item, order number 26-005, 7 p.m. public hearing and action on the new request for a food handler's license from Shania P. Janwanet, doing business as Taste ME, located at 680 US Route 1. Apologies for any mispronunciations. Kristen.
This is also a new business in the town. It has gone through and been reviewed by appropriate departments and is in compliance.
Great, thank you. Any public comment on this one? Motion?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on this? All right, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. Best of luck. Moving right along, old business, none at this time. Moving on to new business. Order number 26-006, first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 1019 Manufactured Housing Community Ordinance with regards to LD 949. Back to the clerk.
The legislature enacted law this session known as LD 949 that prohibits municipalities from charging any additional fees beyond the fees paid to the state for state license fees for manufactured housing communities to operate. So this is a license that we already have and we do charge fees for. So it's brought to our attention that this passed. So these are changes to the ordinance that would require them to still get a license, but there's no fees associated with said license. And you will see later on in Chapter 311, we are removing those, but these are the updates to the ordinance to reflect it.
Great. Thank you. Any public comment on this one? Do we have a motion?
Second.
Great. Thank you. Any discussion on this? John?
So when Corey and I were at the Cakes with Counselors at the State Manufactured Homes, we were asked point blank, why are we charging these fees? And so both of us were a little bit tongue tied when that question was asked. And so I did make sure that the DeFosses know that this was on our agenda because it was important when we had the Cakes with Counselors. And so glad to see it's getting addressed.
That's great. Sure, we can take credit for it,
Yeah,
right?
we will.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I'll call the vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. All right. Order number 26-007, first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 1015.A mobile, I don't know if that's a separate one or not. A mobile food vendor ordinance. Sorry if I got mixed up by the punctuation there. Kristen.
This ordinance is actually just a year old. So throughout the past year, during the peak mobile food vendor times, Deputy Chief John Brennan and I worked a lot together, gathering feedback from staff, from license holders, from the public, everything like that. And there are amendments that we took into consideration that would make the process easier for pretty much everyone. There was a slight change to one of the documents that have to be provided for the application. It's their SurfSafe certificate. This was actually recommended by one of the vendors that we should be requiring this for everyone. So that was added. Another issue that we had was when people were coming in for 1 day or 2 day events, whether it was going to Lowe's, they had a meat truck 1 day, they had an event where there was a cookie vendor from out of state. Summerfest was a big one. Some people just doing Summerfest or concerts in the park, and having to go through our whole entire process, paying a $250 fee for one event. So we took that in consideration and looked at doing a 1 day license as well as a 2 to 7 day consecutive license, as well as the option for the season. In conjunction with that, we struggled because the peak season for some of them to apply is July and August, and council only meets once. So we were struggling with timing, and a lot of some vendors out of state, especially, or out of town, don't know our schedule, don't know when we need those documents by. So they were kind of missing those deadlines, which was a struggle for us. So one of the changes was looking at the 1 or 2 day licenses to do the same process with inspections, application, everything like that. But instead of coming to town council for approval, it would be internal from the town clerk's office, checking with all the departments we usually check with. Another thing we were doing kind of to alleviate some of the work on code enforcement and fire is to allow applicants to provide documentation of a past inspection that was done by another accepted community. We didn't want to list the communities here because that could change. A good example this year, Deputy Chief Brennan spoke with Portland and Westbrook, and they do pretty much the exact same process he does for inspections. So he was allowing people to show me that inspection for the current year. We will, take that instead of making you bring your food truck here, us repeating that same process. So we put that in here. Essentially, it would be waived by code enforcement or the fire department. Operating without a license was another big one. We had a lot of complaints by people who did obtain a license, go through this long process, and then they saw someone operating that they knew was not licensed. A great example was the bank next door. They didn't even know this process started, so we went over to educate them, but you're still having people upset that some people don't have licenses. So we kind of looked at that as, instead of going over, there's a line of people ordering food and shutting them down, what other option can we do? So the option would either be you shut down because you're operating without a license, or you can comply. So it would be between, the deputy fire chief would be the one going out, talking with them, getting the application, having them pay, and then there's also an additional fee as like an expedited fee after the fact kind of thing. So that is in here. And that is it.
Good, thank you. Any public comment on this? Seeing none? Have a motion?
Take a second.
Side of the dice. Well, you knew. All right. Any discussion? Karen?
Sure. Yeah, I first want to thank Kristen and Deputy John Brennan for going through this and kind of pivoting and responding to, after having an ordinance in effect that clearly was with good intentions, but we needed to correct. We don't want to create barriers for people to come here, even just for one event. I think we have some good events here and there throughout the year that we don't want to create barriers for people. And so I think giving the ability to the clerk to be able to issue those one-time licenses and things like that is a good move. So thank you guys for all your work.
Anyone else? Michelle?
Have we considered like a regional license? Because when you started listing out towns, it almost feels like, I have a driver's license, so I can drive anywhere in Maine, or, because I think that makes a really good point. I know when Larry and I met with the business community, one of the things they talked about was just trying to simplify, getting licenses or getting permits, or just, having more of a, just a smooth process with all of these things.
I don't know if that's part of any discussion at this time. I know the state of Maine has their own licensing, and then typically this, like our food handlers and a lot of other ones, whatever town you're operating in, for all of these, you typically have to get one for that municipality as well. So we do have a lot of people who may have food handlers in different communities, mobile food vendors, massage in different places.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Claire?
Chris, I just had a question here that there's a seasonal application. Is that the equivalent to the annual fee that's in the fee schedule?
Yes.
Okay. And then I just wanted to point out that I had met with our planner back in the fall and had looked to, based on some feedback from the business community, look into going back to also offering a single site opportunity for people, because what's particularly for seasonal or annual, the requirement right now is to build out a food court, is the expression, and it could have like 3 different food vendors there, but it's a real barrier to entry for small business. They can't afford to build a facility that could handle these trucks and all. I've been in touch with one person in particular that would like to be able to have a fixed, not traveling, but like an ice cream food truck on the property of an existing business. That was considered last year when this was done, and it was taken out, kind of to give the food court time to percolate and see if anything comes with that. So my intention is to come back and try to amend this again. I was trying quickly to do it in time to make this ordinance meeting, partly on the base that Autumn at the time had indicated she'd like to tackle it all at once. Since then, both of us have seen some urgency to get this done because of the seasonality of the existing people that are taking advantage of this. So I don't really have a problem with that. And it may need to go through long range planning, but I just wanted to say that my intention is still to come back with that and see what we can do to try to help small business be able to run those in town.
Thanks, Larry. Yeah, we'll look forward to that. And thanks, Kristen, for that overview. And I also, like Karen, appreciate the work of staff to be responsive and, be nimble as appropriate, and also maintain health and safety standards and hopefully ensure a little bit of a level playing field too. So With that, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. Order number 26-008, first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 1002, Shellfish Conservation Ordinance. And we'll hear from the Marine Resource Officer.
Good evening. So in front of you, you'll have the document that the Shellfish Conservation Commission went through. A few of the items are just from DMR recommendations. Another few of the items are stuff that we brought forward. So on the first page, you'll see it per day is striked out, and we changed that to at each tide. DMR made an error. This specific license is a bushel license for over 60. If we do it per day, it's 1 bushel per 24-hour period, where it should be each tide in the summertime where they can have a double tide. They should be entitled to dig those 2 bushels. The next section, section 7, we're just taking out the word complementary out of that. We can get into that later with the schedule of fees. On section 11, we're removing the word only. In section D on a conservation activity, we removed voluntary on a voluntary basis because the diggers they use that conservation time so that their license doesn't go back into lottery. So that's guarantee their license for the following year. They're required by ordinance to participate in 12 hours of conservation time. The committee voted to add an additional half hour for each hour of survey conducted. So typically, when the shellfish survey is conducted, we're required by state law and our ordinance to conduct that survey. That's how we set our allocation numbers on an annual basis. DMR looks at that survey data based on the brew stock and says, you're allowed to either increase or decrease your license. A lot of these guys do other conservation activities. So as an incentive, we're gonna, instead of them doing 4 hours on a tide as a survey, we're gonna give them an additional half hour per hour. So it would be a 6-hour conservation time. The next section is in section E, section 3, as well as the town social media sites. We added that because it was done virtually with just general circulation. It's just kind of updating the ordinance language. The next section is I under penalty. This was recommended by Maine DMR. Will be held accountable versus the wording that is seen there, and add section 10A because that's inclusion of the statute. And then in section P, again, DMR wanted us to take out the language that was in there from back in 2006 and add exactly what they have in other ordinances so that it references the shellfish management law.
Thanks, Darren.
Yep.
Do we have any public comment on this? No? Anyone on the council have any comments or questions for Darren? No? Appreciate that overview, and we'll call the vote. All in favor? I'm sorry, we need a motion first.
So moved.
Right.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor then. Thank you. Yeah. You guys will have, I'm sorry, you opposed. Apologies. That is 6-1. Order number 26-009, first reading and schedule a public hearing and second reading on the proposed amendments to Chapter 311, schedule of license, permit, and application fees. This for you, Krista?
It's gonna be me and Darren.
All right.
Liam's gonna pull it up. So the first couple, are from Autumn Spear, the town planner. Staff is recommending an increase in permit fees for zoning determination letter and sign permit fees to reflect the actual staff time spent. They're also recommending moving the planning administrative review fee and adding a minor site plan amendment. They do not charge per square foot with minor applications. Those are for planning. And Darren's gonna talk in regards to shellfish.
So the reason these fees were looked at was brought by town council, came to me and asked me to evaluate where we were at. So we did a deep dive analysis into our shellfish management fees. I will say that Our fees were last updated on March 6th of 1997. So this was reflective of what was dealt with in 1997. So I did an analysis from Kittery to Eastport with the assistance of one of the members of the Shellfish Committee that had done some as well. Looked at the management fees and basically set our fees on the state average because we haven't looked at them since 1997. They're basically doubling. But again, we're talking 29 years ago. So each fee had gone up. We left the fees from the day licenses as is because those were just evaluated 3 years ago. Or 2 or 3 years ago, I think is the date. I can't see it. So that was the recommendation we brought to ordinance committee at the request of you folks.
Then if
Well said.
we go down to town clerk recommendations, so the mobile food vendor licenses, which I just discussed for the ordinance. So this kind of breaks it into the classes for the different ones. So you would have the annual renewal, the annual for everyone who's new, the renewal for the annual. So if someone had a license the year prior, the 2 to 7 consecutive days, the 1 day, and then the after the fact. The after the fact would be addition to the license fee, and that was the one I mentioned where if we go out and find someone who's not in compliance, giving them the option of something besides just shutting down. Food handlers, we have a couple updates. This was also based on business feedback and resident feedback. We updated them April of last year. One of the things that at the time, we looked at 15 communities and did the average, what other towns were charging and things like that when we came up with the class schedule. One of the things that we did not do was in-home licenses. So originally they were $110 under the old fee schedule. We left them off. It was an oversight. So it actually put them in the no liquor category, which is $300. So we had some businesses, whether it was people who have produce and they're selling the extra. There's some that we have that are honey, coffee that does in-home. They all went from 110 to 300. So we added a category for them for the 150. That is a slight increase from the 110 that they originally were paying. And then to make everything equitable for all food handlers, everyone who provides something that's consumed by the public is required to have one of these licenses. So one of the complaints we were getting was, especially from the farmers market, is you have some of the businesses that are already Scarborough businesses at the farmers market who are paying anywhere from $300 to $600 getting these licenses, and then they're having other businesses from other municipalities coming in and not having any license at all. So looking at that, we did a temporary license that would include the farmers market, and that would be $50. They're not here the whole entire year, so kind of looking at what the other fees were and looking at something that was fair to everyone. The next one was the manufactured housing. That was to become in compliance with the state law, so we just removed those totally. Another thing that we were fixing was the application fee for all town clerk licenses. So we added a $50 application fee. Really, after having this for, a decent amount of time, we determined that it really should only apply to new licenses because there is a lot more steps to new licenses. So we're moving that for just that. And that is it.
Great. Thank you both. Any public comment on this? We did hear from someone earlier during general public comment. I think we remember the gist of that. Seeing none, have a
So
motion.
moved.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay. Any discussion or questions for staff? Karen?
Again, Kristen, thank you for all of your hard work, because I know you take a lot of time looking at the communities around us, trying to be equitable. So I know we're always adjusting our fees, but we're doing this to try to be equitable and also not subsidize the stuff that's going on within our town. Specifically in regards to the shellfish fees, like, I just want to say that was my request. I know he said council, I attended a meeting. It kind of came out during the meeting. We hadn't adjusted the fees in 30 years. And so I said, hey, let's do that. I know it's a huge hike. We discussed this at ordinance in detail about kind of why we wanted to continue to move it forward. I support, the recommendation that's coming forward, especially with those fees. I understand that some of this is doubling, but again, we're talking about 30 years of, time going by and the cost that it incurs for our harbor master to do his job under this and things like that. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that as well. But I think otherwise this is great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, basically everything, this is one vote on all of it, I guess, or no?
Correct.
So.
Yes.
Just like to say that I agree with most of it, but one item, so I'm gonna have to say no.
Okay. Thank you. I promise I'll count correctly this time. Anyone else? Michelle?
Yeah, I guess I just wondered why we went 3 decades without making any adjustments. And it seems like they seem like very reasonable adjustments, given, if you look at inflation over 3 decades, it's pretty, I can't even imagine what the number is, what the present value of that money would be. But also, it seems like we would want to put a process in place. So maybe like every 3 years, we're reviewing everything, or so if somebody had a steep increase, it would be shocking, even though, it's 30 years versus, incrementally, you might go up $25 if we were doing a, biannual review.
With respect to fees, we do an annual review. And with particular respect to shellfish, just last year, we increased the day licenses as evidence that that category had been changed. I believe we rely heavily on the input from the Shellfish Committee, and let's face it, many of the people on that committee are license holders. I think there might be a bit of self-interest. Nonetheless, I do credit the harbor master for doing the research and providing the data, but it's not as if they've not been looked at. They've not been recommended to be changed.
That's fine. I meant like all of them, like whether it's, everything that went through. So it's just the fees in general, like.
We do an annual, we used to combine it with the budget process. We now separate it. Kristen reaches out to all departments and said, please review your fees and recommend any changes. And this year, these are the ones that came out.
Okay.
They just happen to be concentrated in the clerk's office, really in part because we did some new and different things last year, and we're just correcting for some errors.
Great. Anyone else? Larry?
I'm going back kind of the small business impact on this. I don't think we should kind of penalize the shellfishermen based on the fact that the town didn't change the fees. So it's time, I get that. But I think in a single season to double the fees is a lot. I'm willing to hear some other things, but I'm interested in possibly making a motion to amend it where it goes up 50% this year and 50% the following year. And so I'll go ahead and do that. I'd like to make that motion as an amendment to change those fees. I don't, certainly not the over 65 ones are new. So it'd be really all the commercial, the ones that impact commercial fishermen.
And your amendment is that they would step up by 50% for this year?
2026, and then another 50% in 2027. I just think it's kind of fair to the fishermen to be able to spread that out a little bit.
I support that.
Do we have is there a second for that? Okay. Any discussion on that, on the amendment?
Sure.
Sorry.
Just one point of order. So there are 2 other fees that are resident, recreational, that also are doubled. Are you looking to apply that to that as well, or simply the commercial license? It's up on the screen, so you'll see that resident commercial. Yeah, just for point of clarification.
My preference would be, or I guess what I'm proposing is that it would be just the ones that apply to commercial. Those other ones are low enough, I think, and it's a resident making a decision about what they want to do for the day, kind of. And so it would be an amendment that all the commercial fishing, shellfish fees to go up 50% from the current in 2026 and 50% additional in 2027.
All right. We have a seconded amendment on the table. Any further discussion on that?
Ron
Karen?
had his hand up
You
too.
go, you had,
Sorry.
you had your vote first.
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, again, I will say, I will not support that just because we did dive into this substantially at ordinance. I mean, to me, at this point, the town of Scarborough is subsidizing this practice in the town because this is a part of the Marine Resource Officer's job is to every single day go and do this. So like, this is a big part of his job. And I would imagine since 1997, I can't imagine what the salary is of that position has, but I would imagine that's probably doubled. And then, so I think for me, and I think I will say, and maybe Darren wants to come back up if you want, but what was represented to us during ordinance or during the conversations was that he speaks to all these people. They are used to paying higher fees in other towns. They all knew this was coming. They thought it was reasonable. And I trust the harbor master when he says, these are people he interacts with every day. He's going to see them tomorrow. And they'd be like, why are you telling town council that I said this? So, I mean, I do trust that there's been a substantial amount of communication with the shellfish community. And what I said to them during their meeting and what I said during ordinance is if they have a problem with it, this is the time to show up and let us know that you have a problem with it. And so I think considering how many licenses that we have and the fact that I do feel like we are basically subsidizing this by not capturing the right fees. I do think that these fees are reasonable. They are still not the highest in the state, but we are probably one of the most desirable places for people to shellfish. And so I think, this is where we really do need to say, this is not something that the residents should be paying for, and we need to capture this and make it equitable.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, Larry, I brought up something similar during the conversation, and I was gonna bring something up tonight, but Counselor Shoup does a really good job, I think, justifying the rationale for it. And so I will probably likely vote no for the amendment tonight. But to Karen's point, if we start to hear complaints from the shellfish businesses that this is too much too quick, at second reading, I would support that amendment coming back and support it. So for me right now, I think I'm leaning more with Karen on keeping the fees as presented, but let's go through the process. And at second reading, if we're hearing more from residents, because we heard from one tonight, and we also heard from one at ordinance that said that they weren't necessarily in support of the fees as well. So again, I want to give them that opportunity to come back and tell us, and then I would support it at second reading.
Thanks. Anyone else? Scott?
Yeah, I'm conflicted because I appreciate that you're trying to make it easier on them, whatever, but I would have to vote no still because I'm way the other way. I don't think that we should increase fees. I don't think we should be subsidizing property taxes with fees. They started this 20 or 30 years ago. Cal Betterly said, well, if you don't like the taxes, then I'll just start charging more fees then. We'll just do it on fees. Well, it's still taxes. Fees are taxes, and you're increasing our taxes. And that is one of the main reasons I ran, So I do appreciate it, and I want to go with you on that because it is a good idea, but I really don't think we should have any increase on any fees ever again. So, thank you.
Thanks. Larry?
I'll just point out that you can vote yes on the amendment to change what the fee structure is and still vote no on the overall choice of whether the whole thing passes.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Just one other thing, on the fee thing, back with when they did first started a fee on the moorings, they told us there's just be a $50 fee for an administration fee. That's all it's going to be. And now for me, it's $1,000 a year. So, and the state did the same thing with the trap tags. They said it's just going to be 10 cents a tag. You'll have to pay, 10 cents a tag times 800. That's all it will be. Well, now it's up to $1 a tag that we have to pay for a fee, because once you get the fees started, then it's like a cash cow, and you just keep on with it. So I'm not in agreement. Thank you.
Thank you.
That Sir, and to answer, John, I think I'm not at all opposed to having these fees, and I understand that the impact on the town of collecting it and not subsidizing it to such a great extent. I'm just saying for somebody that's in a small business planning their season, it's a big hit all at once. And so I'm not against the idea of raising, which is why I'm not saying eliminate it, I'm saying just spread it over 2 years. And so it's really from a kind of a business planning standpoint that somebody can have less of an impact this year and then get to the full hit the following year.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I'm somewhat conflicted on this as well. I'm not under the impression that the town is suffering financially right now because these fees have not been raised. I absolutely appreciate what Karen said about making sure that we're covering staff's time, and I respect and appreciate what Darren does, including all the, the research that went into this. But I think it's, we talk about it, not having been updated in 30 years, but for most of the folks who actually do this work, their time horizon is just within the last few years, tops. And so this is a pretty sizable increase. And again, just looking at it from a, again, a small business perspective, to me, it feels reasonable to phase it. So I think I'm inclined to support that amendment. Any other discussion on the amendment? All right, I will call the vote on Councilor Kane's amendment. All in favor? So that carries.
5-2.
5-2. Yeah, great, thank you. Now back to the motion, the motion as amended. Sorry, it is getting emotional. Is there any discussion on the amended motion? It's on the table. All right, I'll call that vote. All in favor? That is 6-1. All right. We're doing a little different math tonight. Thank you very much. I appreciate that discussion, and I, again, appreciate the work of staff on that. There are no non-action items, and so we move on to council member comments.
Chair Fellows, order number 2610.
Oh, sorry. Got way too emotional. All right.
Oh, that's a big one.
It's a fairly big one. Order number 26-010, act on the request to accept the 2026 town council goals. You guys didn't let me get away with that one. So we had a, what I thought was a really good goal setting session on Saturday, the 10th, and I appreciate everyone coming in for that. We started at 8. I think we were done by 11:30 or so. There was obviously a lot of work that was done and a lot of, I think, good thought that went into that before that. But I thought we had some really good discussions, and really, I'm not going to read all these. They're all in the record, and we're certainly all familiar with what they are, and the public has access to this. I will note that I appreciated the members of the public who did attend. We had, I think, 6 or 7 people who sat through that, and so appreciate that. There were no big surprises. I mean, we sort of coalesced around a few big themes. Those being growth, with a recognition of the importance of LD 1829, which we obviously talked about earlier this evening. Some discussions around exploring inclusionary zoning for affordability, having consideration of a temporary moratorium. Those were some of those items. Communication and engagement, continuing to engage with the public where they are, which includes things like takes with counselors or whatever we're going to call the next one. Exploring print, as John talked about earlier during his communications update. Then another category was conservation, sustainability, and resiliency. Continuing to pursue the 30 by 30 goal. Exploring avenues to support responding to the vulnerability assessment. Exploring strategies for limiting tree cutting. Then there's a theme of transportation and traffic, and all these are obviously interconnected, and that was a recurring theme from the workshop as well. So some of the things we talked about at the workshop, looking at strategies for Route 1, Payne Road, Gorham Road, financial affordability and capital planning. So developing a 20-year financial plan by the end of the year to fund and respond to the results of the vulnerability assessment, transportation study, parks and facilities master plan, and open space. Working toward a 0% mill rate for the fiscal year 27 budget to show restraint in advance of the school bond. And I would say restraint and austerity, those have been big themes, and I think we all take that seriously. We also understand that there's things beyond our control, particularly on the school side and with inflation, but I think we're all committed to at least working toward that aspirationally. And we had a few other sort of items that didn't quite rise to the level of goals, but that were things that were that were discussed that could be coming forward, including potentially having a 3 strikes revision to the ordinance for ordinance violations. And then we had some good discussions around council norms. So I really appreciate everyone's time and the thought that they put into it and everyone's participation in that. I don't know if there's anyone from the public who has any comment. All right.
Hi, Steve Zamorowski, Teresa Massey Lane. First of all, while I'm up here on the Route 1 traffic, I can't see how that would work. The same amount of cars are going north in the morning, they come back south in the evening. How can that possibly work? I also noticed that I think 50 miles an hour on that section of road is way too fast. So could we put it down to 35, narrow the road, and still have enough room for the bike lane and 2 other lanes? Or could we create a zipper lane? Maybe there's an electronic way to do a zipper lane. Who knows? I'd like to today talk about the goals. I want to thank all of you for dealing with really sometimes contentious and sometimes emotional issues. And to me, one of those is the whole TIF CEA discussion. The way I read your goals, it seemed like a pledge not to implement a TIF CEA. To me, that's not a good idea. First of all, you don't have to. There's nothing on the table. So why preemptively say we're not going to do something when there's not really any reason to do that? 2, it is an emotional and contentious issue in my opinion. So let's put it on the table until there's something real to talk about. The other issue is with LD 1829 and the fact there's no certainty what's going to happen here. It just takes one tool off your plate, out of your toolbox to work with as far as housing, especially affordable housing. Oftentimes requires some tax incentives. So I urge you to take that off as a pledge, put it on as a thing, it's a serious issue that we need to talk about, but please leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? All right. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion about the goals? Larry?
I wasn't able to attend, and I really appreciate all of you taking into account the written information I gave. I apologize for not being there. I'm very happy to see that I think most of what was cited ahead of the meeting pretty much came out of the meeting. And so I think there was, from my outsider standpoint, I was really just thrilled with the alignment and consensus.
All right, thank you. Bill?
The gentleman makes a good point, but I think if a circumstance did arise, it's a goal, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't modify what we wanted to do in light of the circumstance that was presented before us. So while I'm happy with supporting it as written, I don't think it would preclude us if the right circumstance arose.
Right, thank you. Yeah, along similar lines, and I appreciate those comments as well. And as I said during goal setting, and I've said it other times as well, I think I'm probably more inclined to support TIFs and CEAs in certain situations than some others on the council and certainly some in the community. But I think the consensus that came out of the goal setting conversations was that as with the goal of a 0% mill rate, that it was important for us to really kind of memorialize that as a, at least sort of an aspiration and something that we do take seriously and that we want to have that message out there, that it's not something that we're really inclined to go out of our way to do at this point. Again, as you said, Bill, we can't anticipate everything that might happen, but I think it's a fair characterization of kind of the overall consensus, and I think a pretty good overall reflection of the public sentiment on that. But I do appreciate those comments. John?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said, Corey, and I think for me, this is more about a lot of the feedback that we're getting from the public in terms of taking a breath a little bit as it relates to growth overall. And, you know, there are very few things I think we can control with LD 1829 coming, and this is one. And part of the conversation that we often have is like Scarborough is a really great place to be, and developers, if they want to develop here, you know, should be able to do it without any significant support. I know for affordable housing, though, that this is often a challenge because, as we saw with Marksview, that project, even though it still could have technically gone forward without the CEA, they made the decision not to go forward because they just didn't think they were going to get the financing, is my guess, because of not having the support. So again, we did talk about this in goals about, you know, this doesn't preclude something or an applicant from still applying. So anybody could still apply. It would still have to be reviewed and evaluated on its own merits. But I think just sending a general message right now as we're working through growth that we need to kind of tone down any extenuating circumstance that's out of just like typical normal development, you know, that this is just one of those things that we can control.
Thanks. The only other things I would add are that and again, I didn't want to read through all of this right now, but we did identify, you know, individuals and committees that seemed appropriate, where there would be alignment for the implementation of these goals. And then we also agreed, as we've done in the past, to do sort of a roughly mid-year check-in on goal progress, and, you know, could potentially modify things at that point. Anyone else? That I'll call the vote to adopt the goals. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thanks again. Now we will move forward to council member comments. Anyone have anything? Great. Okay. Go for it.
Yeah, it's touchy subject, but it's on these people calling in, and you had to cut them off. And normally I would not be for that. It's free speech, but even it was offensive to me, and I felt so I should bring it up. And to be direct, I think the big issue is that woman that got killed. And I think that agent was dead wrong to do that. I think I'm for, you know, Trump and, you know, getting government, you know, bureaucracy under control. That's my whole big thing. But, and this is probably an issue that has to be dealt with, but there's a way to go about that. And I just wanted to put it on record that that was dead wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Bill?
I also supported the way you handled that. I thought that was quite appropriate.
Good.
When it got a little bit
Thank you.
beyond, you cut it right off.
Right. Thank you. If there are no other comments, I just thank everyone for all the time this evening, and we've got a little bit more to come. We'll see. The next item is order number 26-011, act on the request for an executive session pursuant to Title I, Section 405.6A, regarding the town manager's performance evaluation. This is an annual process. We will convene in the town manager's conference room without the town manager, and we'll discuss the review. Any comments?
Just point of order, I think you're going to adjourn to executive session, not to return to a regular session. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you.
Need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion on that? All in favor? Thank you. Adjourned.
Is there